let's call this meeting to order. We've got a couple of things we want to take care of. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get into the public hearings, the first thing would be the investment advisor's report, and let's bring that up first. And Scott McIntyre.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Well, good afternoon. You had a good lunch. Let me start with the first slide, the events driving the market, and I'll go through this fairly quick. A lot of this stuff you guys know. The biggest concern right now with the market is the spread of the virus. It's concentrated in a number of different areas across the country, and we're seeing daily new cases approaching 200,000 and hospitalizations and deaths have more than tripled. It doesn't appear to be a problem right now, at least if you look at it, the traffic, and you look at the people who are, at least here in Texas, who are shopping, and that could potentially create a problem, during the holiday season. So everybody's keeping an eye on that. Hasn't really manifested itself in the type of or the degree of slowing that you would expect yet, but that is hanging out there. Obviously, with vaccines, not only do we have the Pfizer, BioNTech, and the Moderna vaccines expected to be ready this month, but you also have a number of other vaccines. In fact, yesterday I had noticed that there were 66 that are in the queue right now in some phase of testing. So that is a big plus, and we do expect that the economy is going to start to look more normal, but that probably won't be until early to midsummer when those of us who are later in line are able to get the vaccine and people feel comfortable traveling. The Georgia runoff, I think I mentioned this before, very, very important. You guys are well tuned into that as well. That vote is on January 5th, and really it's going to decide the control of the Senate. So everybody's keeping an eye on that. That is very important to the markets. I think in terms of, it's so hard to understand how the equity markets are going to see that. Most people on the Wall Street side of the fence, as far as I'm concerned, seem to feel like if the Democrats gain control, that potentially means an infrastructure package in 2021. It probably means bigger stimulus up front. I do believe that there will be some stimulus coming regardless. It might not be this year, but it can certainly be early next year, targeted primarily at the smaller businesses and the individuals who are, have had their unemployment run out. Very, very important here, and that's why I have it underlined here, but there's a massive amount of cash on the sidelines. Bank deposits right now are at record levels, never been so high before. There's, believe it or not, you would expect otherwise given what the stock markets have done, but there's just a tremendous amount of cash. And you're seeing things like Treasury bills issuance shrinking. Of course, the Fed is buying a lot of short-term securities. The fact that there's so much cash ready to come in and the Fed is buying up the securities gives you a mismatch between supply and demand, and that's exerting downward pressure on yields. Stocks, depending on the day you're looking here over the last couple of days, all three major indexes are either at or near record highs. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there is so much cash in the system, and B, the fact that bond yields, CD yields, money market fund yields are basically near zero. And during the month of November, the Dow actually was up 13%, which is the highest single month increase in the Dow in 33 years. So as an investor, when you look at your options, the stock market is suddenly looking pretty darn good relative to the other really poor options that you have. And as I mentioned before, the economic growth, we do expect that this resurgence of the virus is going to cut into fourth quarter GDP growth, but most economists don't believe it's going to be negative. They think it's going to be, positive to the tune of up anywhere from 1% to 3%. So the next slide is employment. I just want to touch on this briefly. The pace of job return has slowed in recent months. We had 22 million jobs disappear from payrolls during the month of March and April. At this point, about 12.4 million have returned. So company payrolls, you still got about 10 million jobs that have not returned yet. A lot of those are service sector jobs. The unemployment rate did fall again from 6.9 to 6.7 in the November report. And the thing about that is, though, if you dig into it, the reason the unemployment rate dropped is because a significant number of Americans stopped searching for work. So in essence, in the household survey where you get the unemployment rate, there were jobs actually lost, not gained during the month. But the denominator on that is the number of people who are looking for work. So a much larger number of people stopped looking for work than actually lost jobs, and that pushed the unemployment rate down. So sort of take that with a grain of salt. Kind of in a holding pattern a little bit. Jobs came back fairly strong. Right now, there's a big shift. I don't want to get too wordy here, but I do want to mention that during this last employment report, brick and mortar stores lost jobs, which is rare when you're coming into November because typically they hire. But what wound up happening is that we're all shopping online. So delivery services, the UPS, the FedExes really geared up and started hiring folks. So to some degree, they were able to offset, but brick and mortar stores are probably going to wind up hurting here in December. So if I go to retail sales, this is somewhat telling. If you look at the blue bars, you can see where consumer spending pretty much had cratered during the month of March and April and spiked whenever there was broad reopening in the economy, and then that sort of curtailed itself. Again, there is a lot of cash on the sidelines. It's concentrated in the people's hands, primarily who are able to work from home right now, and a large swath of the economy is actually not only not working, but are getting to the point where their unemployment benefits are running out. So it is definitely a K-shaped recovery, where the folks who have jobs and can work have money, and the folks who are not working don't have the money. And of course, when you're talking about retail sales, it captures everybody. So at this point, you do see that flattening out quite a bit. And of course, it is consumer spending that drives the economy. So we'll keep an eye on that going forward. The next slide, I just want to mention it to you. It doesn't really affect rates very much, but the housing market has absolutely exploded, which is very, very odd and unusual. I actually had dinner with a realtor friend and her husband on Saturday on her porch, fairly windy, and she had mentioned that realtors, most of the realtors she knew during the month of April primarily actually were able to get large PPP loans because they didn't really anticipate this either. They figured that they would be hurting and people wouldn't be buying homes, in the spring, and then it turned out that was not the case. But I was very surprised to hear that so many of these realtors took the PPP loans. But housing has really exploded again with the people who have money. They're able to work in different places. They're able to live where they want to live. They're exiting the cities, and there is an expectation that home sales are likely to continue, at least for the next several months at this significantly higher pace. The next page is your investment options. The first thing I want to mention is that your October portfolio yield was 98. That was higher than I thought it was going to be. A lot of it has to do with the spending on your side. So the spending, whenever you're spending it, it gets pulled out of the Florida Prime Fund, which is one of the lower yielding options that you have. Obviously, it's in cash. But when the money comes out of those lower yielding assets, it drives the yield up because you have other assets that are higher. And that also happened in November, where you were in a drain period where we didn't have securities maturing. In December, my expectation, if we're going to make the purchases that I'm suggesting, you are going to wind up seeing that yield start to move downward. If you look at the available options, a 6-month Treasury at 9, a 2-year Treasury at 16, 3-year at 21. My thought is that if the expectation is that the economy is going to start to look better during the summer months, I think that should be projected into slightly higher yields, even though I don't expect the Fed is going to raise rates, but I think the market's going to anticipate that at some point during the summer. So instead of going out longer at some of these abysmal yields, we were thinking we would go shorter and position funds to be able to be reinvested, at a later date. So sort of keep that in mind when we get to the strategy. You can see that the agencies, there's not a whole lot of advantage to going from a U.S. Treasury with full faith and credit to a home loan or a farm credit. And again, the callables, there's not a whole lot of advantage to going into callable securities either, and we have a tendency to not focus too much on those. And again, my expectation is, my thought is that you guys are going to feel like you need to buy, because we need to diversify at this point with your money starting to come in and we're having some maturities. But by the same token, we don't want to go out too far in the yield curve because we do expect we're at the lowest interest rate levels we've ever been in history, and B, we expect to see some improvement a little bit later. Some of the pool yields, my observations here, Florida's safe. Is a pool that actually does invest in commercial paper and CDs, and their net yield on that is only 8 basis points, which is pretty shocking to me. Their fees are fairly high. Florida Prime is the pool that the county is using. That is, the highest of the pools, and as I've said many times, the reason I like Florida Prime so much, besides the fact that they're AAA-M rated, is that Federated manages those funds, and we feel like they are a very, very strong funds manager, so we do feel confident there. And then we did get some Palm term rates, roughly 180 days at 15, and you can read that as well as I can. So not a whole lot of options. If you go back to March, we're slightly higher than we were. We've kind of bumped around a little bit, but these rates have pretty much been where they are, and we've had the luxury of having bought securities in the past, and we've been riding those securities for a while, but you've got property tax money that is coming in, and again, we do have some securities that are maturing. So if we go to the next slide, which is notes and recommendations, November 30th was the first maturity that had happened in roughly 3 months. Synovus Bank CD, which was yielding 260, came off the books. That was actually reinvested back for 1 year at 20. And again, you compared that to a 1 year bill at 10, and we felt like that was still reasonable. We chose to go out 12 months instead of going out a little bit longer, frankly, because you weren't really getting paid to do that, and we do expect some improvement in 2021. On December 3rd, Ameris Bank CD that was yielding 252 matured, and that hasn't been reinvested back yet, but we're looking at the 18-month rate at 25 basis points. Ameris actually has a grace period of 10 days, where after the CD matures, they allow you to decide what you want to do with it, and they continue to pay you at 252. So we thought we'd go ahead and ride that one for just a little bit before telling them that we want to reinvest back at 25. They've agreed to hold that rate steady. Upcoming maturities, the next one after this is the end of January. That's a City National Bank at 187. The next one after that is March 8th, and that's at 55, which is going to be a lot easier to part with. So the recommended purchases, and I know these are going to be hard to swallow, but I don't want to have all the eggs in one basket. Diversification is still important, and I do believe it's going to be somewhat of a rocky period between now and summer. So I'm looking at term deposit out 9 months at 15. $15 billion in Treasury notes to September, October, and November, and I didn't get specific on the actual Treasury notes there, because there are about 4 issues to each month, and I've been watching those yields, and they're sort of moving around. So obviously, we would pick the one that had the highest yield at the time. So anyway, and as you can see, we're talking about going out, basically 9, 10, and 11 months. And my expectation and my hope is that when those do mature, that the yield curve will be a little bit more conducive to going out a little bit longer at the time. I'll let you guys look at that portfolio snapshot on your own. Again, that's just sort of a bunch of numbers that fold into the numbers that I've shown you. And then finally, the benchmark comparison. This is for October because we don't have, at least at the time, we didn't have the November benchmarks available. But you can see that the Seminole County red line, continues to move away from its benchmarks, and that's going to be even more pronounced whenever November shows up. And I would have to expect that, going forward for probably the next 6 months, just given what you do have on the books, you may not continue to move away, but I think that gap is going to be there. So if we could go back, Tim, to slide 6 on the notes and recommendations. I guess at this point I want to ask you guys if you have any questions that I can answer before I ask you for approval of the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Scott. Is there any questions from the board?
No questions. I'll move for approval of the investment advisor's recommendations.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Scott, did you want to make those recommendations? I think we all could read them, but just so that it's for the public record.
Yes, I would, just for the record. So we're going to reinvest the Ameris Bank CD at 25 basis points for 18 months. The recommended purchases are a term deposit for 9 months at 15, 3 times $15 million in Treasury note purchases in September of 2021, October of 2021, and November of 2021, roughly at 10 basis points. And I need your approval for us to move forward with this.
Well, we've already got the motion, and I believe that that's what the motion intended to do, by Commissioner Zimbauer and seconded by Commissioner Delory. So you've heard the recommendation. We have that motion in front of us. Is there any further discussion? Without discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes. Scott, thank you very much. We appreciate you waiting until after lunch.
Of course. Thank you all, and I hope to see you in 2021.
Be well.
So do we. Be well, yes. Okay, the other thing that we left on the unresolved at the last, in the morning session, was the discussion of waiving the meeting requirements for some boards and committees, and I know the Commissioner Lockhart also wanted to discuss this. So, County Manager, why don't you go ahead and bring up the issue, and we'll go from there.
Sure, and I have succeeded in taking a very simple issue and causing consternation, and I did not intend to do that. This item really, this was really a note for me not to forget this because I didn't bring it up at the last board meeting when Alan Harris had asked me to. This focuses on a requirement in Chapter 20 of the Code of Ordinances that requires that the Animal Control Board meet 3 times a year. Alan came to me and said because of COVID and because of the need during the year, the Animal Control Board had only met twice. And so he was looking for a formal waiver of the requirement for the 3rd meeting. So when we discussed this at agenda review, I put it on here as an open-ended item because I asked all of the other directors to make sure that they didn't have any boards that were in a similar situation, and we would just bring them all to you. So it was vague and it caused confusion, and I want to apologize for that right out of the chute. The action that I'm looking for from the board today is simply for you to waive the 3-meeting requirement for the Animal Control Board. They've met twice this year. They don't want to hold a 3rd meeting simply because the code requires 3 meetings.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion discussion, and just to be clear, that this is the only board that
Correct.
this would affect.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
With that, is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Public input.
Oh, okay, yes. Is there anyone from, I didn't even think that would need public. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we're back to the motion. Any further questions?
Are there any on the line? Did we ask Clint?
Oh, okay. Is there anyone online? I don't see any.
No, sir.
That's what I thought. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, but thank you, Commissioner Lockhart, for making sure that I did that. Seeing none and seeing that we have the motion, is there any discussion by the board? Any further? Without that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, the other thing, again, before we go to the public hearing, I see Tricia sitting there, and I know that we have one of our lobbyists here in the audience, so let's go to that. We're going to go to the legislative agenda. So, Ms. Johnson, you're on board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. For the record, Tricia Johnson, Deputy County Manager. It's my pleasure to speak to you this afternoon about legislative session 2021, and we have Oscar Anderson with Southern Group to join us. Before Oscar speaks, I just wanted to provide you with a little bit of an update regarding the outcome of legislative session 2020. You may recall that the legislature had a momentous finish in March as several folks were quarantined, so the budget was not complete by the scheduled end date. Session was extended by 6 days, and they had sine die on March 19th. All three of our initial appropriations requests were put into the state budget pre-veto period, and I'd like to thank Senator Simmons and Representatives Plakin and Smith for their advocacy on these requests. Ultimately, however, two of our three appropriations requests were vetoed. The governor vetoed about $1 billion worth of requests before the budget was approved the day before the new budget year, fiscal year began on July 1st. The Lake Jessup Watershed Project was funded for the county at $350,000. So the biggest question that remains from 2020 moving into 2021 session, of course, is what do the budgets for next fiscal year look like, and how much money will be allocated for individual department silos. The state is projecting an approximately $3 billion budget deficit as we move into 2021, and session does convene on March 2nd. There are a number of issues that we're hearing about that may or may not come up as we get into session: sovereign immunity, affordable housing. I've heard some of our government partners talking about changing sunshine law to allow for virtual meetings without a quorum, since many have seen success with that over the COVID-19 pandemic. I would like to, over the next few weeks, speak with each of you individually to talk further about our legislative priorities and appropriations requests. I provided you a copy of our 2020 priorities just so you can kind of see what we had on paper last year. I am hearing from a lot of our partners that they are kind of sticking with what they did for 2020 because counties and cities anticipate being more on defense this year than on offense. So putting too many new things forth may be a challenge. In terms of appropriations requests, it has been suggested that we stick to 1 to 2 rather than our typical 3, and that those requests be focused on shovel-ready projects that will put people to work and that are regional in nature. So I'm working with Public Works to ascertain what projects we have that we may be able to put in requests for, as well as Kim Orenberg and her team, since we've had luck in the past with respect to water quality and cleanup projects. With that, I'd like to welcome Oscar Anderson to the podium just to tell you a little bit more about his sense moving into 2021.
Thank you, Tricia. Commissioners, how are you? This is weird right here. I've got to use this for a second. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. And as always, the Southern Group is very proud to represent the county in Tallahassee. And I think we've had some good successes. To kind of add some to what Tricia already said, the state's clearly going to have a big hole in its budget. I think there was an article in the paper last week said it was $2.7 billion. The House and Senate members seem to think it's going to be closer to $3.5 billion. I've heard as high as $5 billion. At the end of the day, it's going to be hard from an appropriations perspective. You know, that we've got a new speaker and a new Senate president. Speaker Sprouse and President Simpson are great. I don't think they have the continued animosity towards local governments that we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, and I'm sure there'll be a good share of those attacks on home rule that we've seen, but those of us that represent local governments are hopeful it won't be as bad this year as it has been in the past. There are a lot of things being talked about to solve some of the budget challenges. One of them is what they call the e-fairness bill, which I know the Association of Counties is going to pursue as well, which is eventually enforcing online sales tax collection. That could generate upwards of $500 million a year, which is a big big step towards solving that problem. Another issue they've talked about is the gaming compact, which had lapsed, and they haven't been getting those contributions for a while, and so they want to start that again. The problem with all of those things, of course, is that's going to require legislation to get them passed. We won't know the answer to that till the end of session, and they're going to be making budget decisions as we go along. So they're not going to, those numbers won't be baked into the budget. They'll kind of help backfill some reserves if they solve those problems, and hopefully we'll be better for the year after. So I'm here to answer any questions. The Senate has announced its committees. I think, with Senator Broder, who knows his way around Tallahassee, I think that'll be helpful. Obviously, we had our representatives came back, which I think is great. Any kind of seniority and understanding of the process is helpful. And we're waiting to hear the House committee. We've seen some leadership announcements. We haven't seen the actual committee structure yet and who's going to be on those committees. But we're excited and actually, we don't even know how we're going to meet, frankly. I say we're excited. We don't really know. There's a lot of rumors around that there's going to be like a holding pen for people that have appointments in the Capitol, out in the Capitol courtyard or in the old lobby, and then you'll get called up when your appointment's there. It's going to be interesting to see how they tackle this problem. Obviously, with the vaccine kind of starting to get rolled out, I don't know how soon that'll happen in Tallahassee, but my guess is it'll probably be pretty early in the process just to kind of facilitate government up there at the state level. So with that, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. I don't know if anything else you want me to cover, Tricia. So
Does anybody have a question? I just have a couple. So nobody roaming the halls. Oh, won't that be wonderful?
yeah, if you're a legislator, probably yes.
So Tricia, just for the sake of the commission, as we're there, and Oscar also, then what you want us to do is over the next couple of weeks, get with you, discuss your priorities, individually, your priorities, kind of collectively put them together, and you'll be coming back and talking to all of us. Now, there only poses one problem with that, and it's not really a problem, but we have a legislative delegation. Our delegation meets earlier than most. They're meeting next week. And so part of, I will reiterate the basics in doing that, representing the commission on home rule, affordable housing. Certainly just discuss some of the projects that we had vetoed last year but got passed. I do think, and I've talked to Trish about this, I think it's important when we're talking about home rule, I think we want to also put if you will, a face on the home rule that we're concerned about, and those clearly would be ensuring that the rural boundary is protected, and that the Wekiva Parkway and Protection Act is protected, and there isn't any changes in either one of those. So that's something that's part of home rule, and that's something that I would bring up there also. I think that's something that's clearly priorities for all of us. And with that, does anybody else have anything for Tricia right now?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of months ago, we were talking about the need that our fire chief was talking to us regarding additional fire suppression on I-4, and our chairman at the time wrote a letter to DOT requesting to change their policy, and DOT did send us a letter back on November the 16th saying that great idea, but no.
No. Yes, you said, short answer, no.
The reason I'm bringing it up is I don't want to have the direction today, but I think we all should be briefed, and so we can actually talk about that at the appropriate time. I, for one, think it's appropriate, but I want to make sure that we're all informed before we start having that discussion.
And with that, I'll take that off my district report.
Okay.
Okay. I think one other thing that needs to be said, that kind of Oscar breezed through it, but it needs to be said when you're dealing with the legislature right now. A $3 billion, let's just call it even $3 billion deficit is huge. We're talking about a $90 billion budget, but so much of that is already taken off the table, whether it be education, health and human services, those two, and certainly with at COVID, Health and Human Services will probably be looked at to get a boost. Education, with some of their concerns, will probably get a boost. So when you talk about that, I think all the other discretionary issues that we like to, usually those are the ones that we're asking money for, will probably it'd be very, very difficult. So poor local government, we're always playing defense anyway, but I'm not, anything that we might get from the legislature, I think might be a Hail Mary this year. So I just wanted to let folks know that, unless something changes dramatically. I think we have more chance up at the federal government with what Nicole said, that we might be getting some help with the local government from them. So with that, if there's nothing else, thank you very much, Trish.
Thank you, sir. The only
Ms.
other thing I
Johnson.
wanted to mention for the record is the legislative delegation meeting is next Wednesday, the 16th at 9 a.m. in this room. For the viewers and the public, they are going to offer a Zoom option, and we will be posting on that website on our website, once we receive it from the organizers. And Orange and Osceola's meetings will be in January. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Oscar.
Now, if I can, bear with me, because it's, we always, when we started the public hearings, we knew we always had to say a number of things. I think with the new procedures, we have another half a page that we have to read. So bear with me. First, though, I need a motion to accept the proof of publication.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded for proof of publication. Discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, passes unanimously. Now I'm going to go into the long dissertation. Our staff will present each item for consideration with staff recommendation. The board will have an opportunity to ask questions on staff when presentations have finished. The applicant will have an opportunity to make a presentation. The board will have a chance to ask questions once the presenter has finished. People interested in speaking for or against the project issue may speak in person, or if virtually, they should register at the Seminole County website by going to the Board of County Commissioners page and clicking on the webinar registration link. If you are unable to join via computer or online, interested parties should call 407-665-0808 for additional information. If you would like to make a comment and are attending the meeting using a computer or iPad, click on the raise hand feature. If you have called in on the telephone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. You will be called on in order that you have raised your hand. You will only be allowed to give comment once per item. Speakers should state their name and address clearly for the record and whether you are for or against the item. Speakers will be given 3 minutes to speak unless they are official spokesperson for an HOA or a legally organized group, and they will be given 6 minutes. If a board member has questions regarding the speaker's comments, an opportunity will be given once speaker's time has expired. Speakers should limit their comments to pertinent information regarding the agenda items under discussion, keeping your comments on point and brief. Once all the speakers are heard, the applicant will have the opportunity to rebut if necessary. We will close the public hearing and put the matter in the hands of the commission for discussion, recommendation, or motion. Following the motion and second, there will be board discussion and a vote will be taken. Public hearings. While the board welcomes comments from all persons with interest in the proceedings, Florida law requires that the board decision in a quasi-judicial action be supported by competent, substantial evidence presented to the board during the hearing on the application. Competent, substantial evidence is such evidence as a reasonable mind would accept as adequate to support the conclusion. There must be factual basis in the record to support the opinion testimony from both expert and non-expert witnesses. And that what this means is that the public needs, and the applicant and the staff need to provide comments that are based in fact and not just opinion in order for the board to consider if it is a basis for decision. persons presenting testimony may rely on factual information that they present that is presented by the county staff, that is applicant presented, or is factual information included in the county staff report to support their testimony. All persons who present written materials to board for consideration must ensure that a copy of such materials is provided to the clerk for inclusion in the board's record of proceedings and official minutes. Has any commissioner received any oral or written communications regarding quasi-judicial item which we're going to present, which is the appeal? If so, please disclose the substance of the communication and identify the person making the communication. Commissioners may make that disclosure by submitting a written record of the communications. So, and that
Chairman?
would be to the clerk, and then
I will
I have a
submit
little
my-
yellow page that says, if you have anything to be given to the commission records, such as ex parte, please place in the basket located at the clerk's desk.
I will submit ex parte on item number 39, which consists of 3 documents.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman?
39? Yes. This is on 39 now.
Mr. Chairman, item number 39, I have emails as well as meetings that I've had with staff and citizens and some ex parte communication. I'll be submitting that as well.
Okay?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm submitting it as well. It includes emails and a presentation.
Thank you.
And I'll be submitting my ex parte communication electronically to the clerk.
As will I. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
As well, just a recognized point of error in the Board of Adjustment appeal. This is designated as District 2 item. In my district, it is not District 2. It is District 1, Commissioner DeLaury's area.
Thank you very much. I was going to point that out, but thank you very much for that. I'm glad you pointed that out. So we are on 39, which is a Board of Adjustment appeal to the adjustment decision denying the request for a minimum lot size variance from 5 acres to 2.47 in the A5 Rural Zoning Classification District, and more particularly known as 2391 Pandora Lane.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, when we spoke to the clerk as well as the attorney's office, the ex parte communication has to be handed in by paper, not email. So I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that.
I confirmed that at our meeting last week, that it could be still done electronically, and the answer was yes.
Well, we confirmed it again, and we're getting differential opinions, so that's why I'm bringing it up to someone's attention.
Well, it's going to have to come electronically later on, because I don't have it on a piece of paper in front of me right now, so.
I have the paper in my office, but I can present it, but I concur with Commissioner Lockhart.
I just would like to get an opinion from
I think we've-
someone.
I think
If there
we've
was a
covered-
change in opinion, it would have been good to let us all know.
Well, I think we've covered this ground multiple times, and we've heard multiple different answers, so
Let's let the attorney clarify it.
Well, today's answer is it can be either by paper or electronic. If it is electronic, it needs to be submitted so someone has the opportunity to review it during or prior to the meeting.
Okay. So I will, if my office is listening, please give the electronically.
Well, I
Thank
am
you.
my office, and I'm listening, and I'm here, so I'll get it to you when I get it to you.
Okay, so that's the clarification we have right now. Ms. Angie Keyhofer will be presenting item 39, appeal of the Board of Adjustment decision for denial of the request of the minimum lot size variance for 5 acres, excuse me, to 2.47 on A5 district. Angie?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you to Commissioner Zimbauer for pointing out my error. I appreciate that. It is in District 1, Commissioner DeLaury's. Agenda item number 39 is a request for the appeal of the July 27th, 2020 Board of Adjustment decision to deny the request for a minimum lot size variance from 5 acres to 2.47 acres in the A5 Rural Zoning Classification District, and more particularly known as 2391 Pandora Lane. The subject parcel is part of an illegal land split and is not a legal parcel of record prior to July 28, 1970, and is within the East Rural Boundary District. The subject parcel on August 10th, 2020, Peyton and Jacqueline Wasson, appellants, filed a notice of appeal of the Board of Adjustment decision. The previous owners of the property, Cody and Angie Allstott, bought parcel 10C at a tax deed sale in May of 2016. They were told in writing by staff in 2018 that the lot was not buildable due to the illegal land split. The parcel was created in the mid-1980s before the rural land use and zoning regulations were adopted, but the comprehensive plan, Future Land Use Policy 11.15, states that the parcel had to be a parcel of record as of 1991, when the rural zoning and future land use were established in order to be vested. Unfortunately, this parcel was not a lot of record as of that date, since it was not created through the county subdivision process. The county adopted its subdivision regulations in 1971. Prior to 1991, the property was zoned A1, one dwelling unit per acre, with a suburban estates future land use. If the zoning had not changed in 1991, there would have been a way for the parcel to become legal through the subdivision process. The parcel, if able to meet the minimum zoning requirements, could be platted through the rural subdivision process, which allows lots to be subdivided platted on an easement. Letters of support were received from the surrounding neighbors as indicated on the map. A letter of opposition was received by Richard T. Creedon, Vice President of Geneva Citizens Association, Inc., and was provided via email to the board members. A letter of opposition was also received from Linda Hornbeek, located at 3201 Curryville Road. Based on the information, findings, and conclusions included and referenced in the agenda memorandum prepared in association with the original action taken by the Board of Adjustment at its meeting on July 27, 2020, and the testimony presented and the aforementioned meeting, staff recommends the Board of County Commissioners uphold the decision of the Board of Adjustment to deny the request for a minimum lot size variance from 5 acres to 2.47 acres in the A5 Rural Zoning Classification District. This concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have for staff.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any questions from staff? Seeing none, stay close. Okay. I think we have today Mr. Mark A. Watts of Cobb and Cole will be presenting on behalf of the appellant. Mr. Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Mark Watts with the law firm of Cobb Cole. My address is 231 North Woodland Boulevard, DeLand. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this afternoon. And while I appreciate that opportunity, I will affirm wholeheartedly that neither my clients nor I want to be here asking for the relief that we're asking for. That being said, this is the only option available to them to move forward with the investment they've made in what they plan to be their retirement property. So Andy and Jackie Wasson are here with me. I want to start out by just thanking your staff. While we haven't necessarily agreed on all of the analysis as we've worked through this, they've been great to work with. Nika Husseini, who works with my office as well, has had extensive conversations with them through the whole process, and just, again, top-notch work on their part, so we very much appreciate that. I've got a couple things I would like to walk through with a PowerPoint. I'm not sure if it's preloaded or... What's that? That one? Okay. Bear with us just a second to get this up. As the staff materials reference, we're here asking for you to consider an appeal of the Board of Adjustment's denial of minimum lot size for what really has, since the mid-1980s, been a legal, or not illegal, but a lot of record from a tax standpoint in Seminole County. Okay, thank you. Okay, so as you saw in the staff presentation, the property is about 2.47 acres. Now, it's actually 3.67, but when you net out the wetland areas, it's 2.47 acres, and it's currently in the area zoned A5. Just to walk you through a little bit, and again, some of this was covered in the staff presentation, but the timeline of what's brought us here. I want to kind of give you some editorialized comments on some of this. Again, this parcel was created with a deed that was filed sometime in the mid-1980s, 1984, 85. There has been a separate tax ID number that has been taxed and billed by the county since that point in time for this particular parcel. Now, at that point in time, the property was zoned A1. So a parcel of this size was legal at that point in time, but, you know, as staff had pointed out to you, it did not go through the formal subdivision process that was in place. Moving on to 1991, that's, I think, when the county adopted the revised regulations for the eastern portion of the county that put in place the 5-acre minimum. May of 1991, this property and the property located, I believe, to the east of it, going back here, just to the left of the picture in your screen here, were deeded to that parcel owner, the McDonoughs, who still actually own the smaller parcel. The McDonoughs owned it until May of 2013, when they lost the back parcel to a tax deed sale. The county took back control of the property and auctioned it at tax deed in 2013. Mr. and Mrs. Allstott purchased it, who ultimately became the sellers to our client. They purchased it in 2016. And in 2018, as staff mentioned, there was a lot research report done that confirmed to the Allstotts that the property was not buildable. The unfortunate part for my client was that was not noted on the parcel card. It was not noted in the records. So when they came to verify the ability to get a permit before their closing in May of 2019, it was confirmed to them that the property was buildable at that point. So that's kind of where we are. And the unfortunate thing here, it's a difficult situation. The unfortunate thing here is that our clients, I think, did everything right from the standpoint of following the steps. They had an attorney that did their title work and handled their transaction. They visited, the county building to inquire as to the permittability of a home, and they were told at that point in time that yes, in fact, they could get a permit. And yet they find themselves here now, confirming, I think, correctly after the fact that, without a variance or without going through the subdivision process, they can't actually obtain a permit on the property. So we applied for the variance. These are your general variance criteria, and I think in working through with staff, we were able to satisfy all but one. The one criteria that staff indicated that they didn't believe that our application satisfied was that, sorry, put the readers on. That the request would not confer on the applicant or petitioner any special privilege that is denied by Chapter 30 to other lands, buildings, or structures in the same zoning district. And I think that the staff response to that was that issuing a building permit to a lot that is not, that is an illegally subdivided parcel of land would be a right that is not commonly enjoyed by other properties in similar circumstances. However, what we believe is that by asking for the variance to the lot size, to recognize the existing size of a parcel that has existed and been taxed by the county since 1984 or 85, we're not actually asking you to issue a permit on a parcel that's not gone through the subdivision process. We're asking you to give us, to grant a variance that will allow us to take the parcel through that subdivision process, go through the process to establish it as a legal lot, and let it move forward with permitting. And we think that is, I think, consistent with one of the interesting things you see in this particular area. While the majority of the parcels are larger, this is the existing cluster of lots. If you see the green star is our client's property. The parcels that are outlined in red are all other parcels in the area that are less than 5 acres in size. All created at a time when A1 zoning allowed there to be smaller lots. And this, of those 4 parcels, the 5 parcels, our client's parcel is the only one that does not have a house on it at this point in time. As staff had indicated, in working through not only with your staff but also with the residents in the area, each of the boxes there with a green check in it are letters of support that you received that are in your agenda materials. And so I just want to kind of walk through, the things that led us to be where we are. 1984, 1985, this parcel was created. A deed was recorded that had a separate legal description. The property appraiser's office created a separate tax ID. and the county began taxing this as a separate parcel. At that point, there's no check and balance in between zoning and the property appraiser's office to verify whether that was legally subdivided or whether it met the criteria for zoning and subdivision. So, I think that's kind of the first thing that leads us to where we are at this point. Obviously, the fact that it didn't go through the rural subdivision process prior to, the 1991 change in the comprehensive plan kind of boxes us in to that what happened in 1984 being something that now requires a variance rather than going back and just simply going through the subdivision review process. Now we're required to be here and ask for the variance to allow it to happen. Interesting, and I know that when I spoke with several of you, about this, one of the things from this property after that fact then passed through the county's hands. When it came back to the county for unpaid taxes in 2013, some of the other counties I mentioned in some of my conversations with you, I worked as an assistant county attorney in Pinellas County for a time. I've practiced for 20-something years in Volusia County and Flagler County now. And one of the things from a policy standpoint that I think would have saved us from the situation we find ourselves in now is that in some of those other counties in the area, if a non-conforming parcel is taken back by the county for unpaid taxes, it's only offered to adjacent property owners. It's not put back out through a general auction as this one was. It's only offered to those adjacent parcels that could combine it into a conforming parcel. But that's, I don't think, a policy that Seminole County has in place. I think it's one that's a good one to maybe consider because it would certainly help avoid a repeat of this situation that our clients find themselves in. And then finally, just flip one more here. I think the other thing that, when there was a lot, status request or, report done in 2018 with the prior owners, the notation on that parcel record that, we've researched this parcel. We know it's not a buildable parcel. Avoids the mistake of coming in and asking, is this permittable? Can I get a permit for this? And being told yes. So, I think those are all, sort of unfortunate circumstances, but our clients who I think, of the people in the history of this kind of have the cleanest hands, if you will. They're the ones left, with the situation that they don't have any other recourse for. Now, one of the things that I think is particularly important that you keep in mind when you're looking at a variance is variances do not set legal precedent. Variances by their nature are designed to keep local governments that are enacting zoning and land development regulations from being on the hook for a taking when they don't, when a piece of property is regulated to the point where it doesn't have any other use. You have to have a relief valve through something like a variance in order to look at the particular facts of a specific piece of property and be able to provide relief that otherwise wouldn't be there based on your general regulatory scheme. So, that's something I think is very important here. I know how important, in a lot of different circumstances, whether you're setting a precedent or not weighs on your decisions. And so we actually provided you a citation to some of the kind of a statement of the common case law here that, variances, in fact, have to be reviewed on their own merits rather than on the basis of something that's been previously approved. They're fact-specific, they're property-specific. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I thank you and your staff for all the hard work in bringing us here. Like I said, no offense, we'd rather not be here, but this is really our option for our clients. So with that, happy to answer any questions you might have, and the Watsons are here as well if you have any questions of that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watts. Is there any questions?
Questions for staff?
Okay. If I can have, we'll go back to staff in a moment. We've got one person with public comment. Thank you very much. Mr. Watts, there's a Jerry Edwards. Jerry, come on out. Jerry Edwards is speaking in favor of this. Mr. Edwards.
Well, Commissioners, thank you for allowing me to speak. I don't have a lot to say except
Mr. Edwards, for the record, name,
oh, yes, I'm sorry.
address.
Jerry
No problem.
Edwards, 2411 Pandora Lane, Chuliota, Florida. I have 5 acres adjoining Mr. Watson's property. I have the whole southern side of his property, and my residence is there. I've lived there for approximately 30 years and seen what's gone on with this property and the property around there. And it's a real interesting area because my property was originally, when I bought it about 30 years ago, in 2 pieces. And I put it back together for tax convenience. And the reason I'm here is that when the rubber meets the road, I would like to have Mr. Watson as a neighbor. I think he would be a good neighbor, and he would be environmentally sound as far as the county goes. He's done a lot of work out there already, cleaning up the mess that was left behind by the previous owner. And I won't take up any more of your time, except that I am very much in favor of him receiving the variance to build his retirement home. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Is there any questions of Mr. Edwards? Okay. Is there anyone else here from the public that wishes to speak, either for or against? Seeing none, I think we have some questions, but Mr. Watts, you do have
Mr. Chairman.
rebuttal. Do you
Mr.
want to
Chairman.
rebut?
Mr. Chairman, is there anybody online?
I see none, but I will ask. Thank you. Clint, is there anybody online?
No, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm watching that closely, really. Okay. Mr. Watts, I don't know if you want to rebut somebody in favor of it, but...
Absolutely not.
Okay. Does anybody, again, have any questions of Mr. Watts? All right, thank you very much. I do know that some commissioners have questions of the staff, so Commissioner Lockhart?
I do. And Commissioner Delary, since this is your district, if you have questions and you'd like to go first, I'd be happy to.
Thank you. I would.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like
And
for the
Commissioner
attorneys,
Glory, and then
I'd like for the
Commissioner
attorneys
Lockhart.
to discuss how we got here, because I'm having issues with, we have an unconforming lot, and you have an individual that is purely innocent because they bought a piece of property on a tax sale, and they're here, but I'm just trying to understand how that actually happened. From a legal standpoint, how did this all take place?
The county cannot restrict the sale of property from anyone to anyone. Our legal authority on regulation starts with the zoning and the building permits. So if somebody sells a non-conforming lot to somebody else that is not a buildable lot, we can't prevent the sale of that lot. But again, we do not and cannot provide the appropriate permits for that because it is not meeting our standards.
Okay, so if they did a title search, would this come up in a title search?
It should, but in this case, the fact that the property was not buildable was not caught in the title search. And I can't address that. I haven't researched that or looked at that. And that really is a private matter, not a county. We would not be involved in that title search.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Commissioner Lockhart, and then Commissioner Zimbauer.
So many years ago, when I was a member of staff here, we had a rash of legal non-conforming lots coming forward. And there was a process, I want to say back in 2005-ish, and Kathy Hamill was involved in that, where we set up a system with a property appraiser to flag legal non-conforming lots. And I'm seeing staff's head shaking yes. So why did that not work for this situation? How was the flag not existing there?
Because that process wasn't in place at the time that the lot research request was done. There wasn't that system with the property appraisers now. If someone comes in, for example, if I have 100 acres and I want to subdivide it into 100 one-acre parcels, prior to the process that we've kind of set up currently, they would be able to do that as long as you were the owner and you put it in writing to the property appraisers to subdivide it and had the surveys or deeds or whatever it was that they required it without coming through us. I don't know if the process that you're talking about, but the process that we do have in place now is if someone comes in to the property appraisers and they want to subdivide a lot, they will bring to staff in planning and development a form, it's called a lot split or combo form, if they want to combine another piece to it. We'll do the research at that time, and then at that point, we would catch it and say yes or no, they can or cannot do this process.
Okay.
But that process was not in place at the time when this took place.
Just
Right,
before another
so-
question, very quickly. Because this is on tape, Mr. Chipoff was the speaker before, and if everybody, even the staff, could, I don't need your address, but just state who you are when you're speaking after you've been asked a question. So that was Angie Kielhofer that just answered that question, and I think that Rebecca Hammock wants to finish the answer of that question.
And just to clarify, Rebecca Hammock, for the record, Development Services Director, and just to clarify what Angie had stated was that process, that where if somebody wants to go do a lot split or a lot combination through the property appraisers, and they're required to get zoning approval sign off beforehand, my understanding that was put in place within the last 10 years. And this illegal lot split, or this lot, was created in the mid-1980s. So like Angie said, it wasn't in place at the time.
Okay, so at some point in time, though, our organization did and I'm speaking this from memory, so if I'm speaking something that's incorrect, I want someone on staff, maybe Kathy, who was here at the time, can say, no, that's not how that happened, and correct me, because correct me if I'm wrong. There was a concerted effort to scour the county for legal non-conforming lots. This was in the mid-2000s.
That I'm not aware of. I don't know if Kathy.
And there was some sort of an effort on the part of the county, because there was a realization that these legal non-conforming lots existed, and people were, in an unsuspecting situation, purchasing legal non-conform, recognizing it wasn't our responsibility, but we were somehow involved in helping to identify these. Am I misremembering that? It's possible.
No, you're remembering that.
Kathy
and-
Hamill is now speaking.
I apologize.
That's
Kathy
okay.
Hamill, Development Services, and you are remembering that correctly, because I remember it was platted lots that we were looking at, is where people were splitting existing platted lots. This is not a platted lot, it's a parcel.
Got it.
And so that was the difference. But yes, you are remembering it correctly, and it was an issue that we were having, and it came to our attention because there was a sale of a platted lot that somebody had divided illegally, and that's how we were able to track it.
Okay, all right, so the reason why this was not caught in that is because it was not platted.
Right, correct.
Okay, so do we have any more lots like this that in the county? Can we kind of have an idea, maybe if we know how many there are existing like this?
Yeah. For the record, again, Rebecca Hammock, Development Services Director. We have probably quite a few lots that are in a similar situation. I couldn't give you a number. We'd have to do research. But we do, have this quite often, and we try to work with people as much as we can to come up with a resolution. I mean, the interesting thing about this case, too, is that this lot, which is 10C, and then the lot to the west, which was 10D, the property owner owned both lots, but then because of the tax deed sale, the lot 10D was sold, and so now the lot to the west is also now illegal and non-conforming.
So when this is all over, I'm going to ask for your plan to fix it. I know that's not the answer, I know that's not what we're here to talk about now.
I've got a note right here about
but-
Mr. Watts' comments. Commissioner Zimbower.
So I think Commissioner Lockhart's memory is correct, and it was for platted lots rather than a parcel. And unfortunately, the way this one has come to be, the rural referendum, which was approved in 2004, is what triggered some of these to become non-conforming. In this particular case, as they just discussed, this was part of 10D. That property owner, for whatever reason, had two parcels, 10D and C, and for whatever reason, just decided they no longer wanted to pay taxes on the parcel that was making up their entire property, which would have been 5 acres or more, actually closer to 7. It could have been financial, who knows, whatever reason, but they basically just let it go to the county, sold as a tax deed, and there was nothing in place during the sale to disclose that it was a non-conforming lot, is the problem. My discussion with our fantastic property appraiser is in the last several years, those are now earmarked. Those are now designated to be able to determine whether they're conforming or non-conforming. Is that not correct?
That I do not know from, we'd have to confirm that. When we called the tax collector to inquire about the process for the tax deed sales.
Right.
They just referred us to the Florida statutes.
Right.
So we weren't able to get, specific information. But I will say, in regards to that, that is, our comp plan does have a policy already that does vest legally created parcels that were done through the subdivision process that were created prior to the adoption of the rural area in 1991. So the parcels that are illegal or nonconforming and can't pull building permits are those that did not go through a legal subdivision process that was in place in 1971 in the county.
But as far as being able to determine, it's my understanding from the property appraisers, it was never previously earmarked, so nobody would know. Which brings us to why we're here today, which my inquiries were exactly what Commissioner Lockhart's were. Well, how are we dealing with this now? I mean, this is not the first one I've seen, and it's probably not the last. And so now I understand we do have a process in place that does identify those. Now, whether that's fully substantial or adequate is yet another question. I think we heard from the attorney that other jurisdictions, which I've verified, do have that in place, which says if it's non-conforming and it comes on a tax deed, it can only be offered to the surrounding parcel owners. That cures the problem right then and there, of course. But, in talking with this applicant, they've attempted to go the legal route, it's my understanding, and get restitution from the seller and so forth and so on, and if it dead ends. For me, as part of my district in the rural area, and as a property owner in Chiliota myself, what's consistent for me is everything around it, with exception one, is basically the same size, with homes already on it. So I don't have a problem with this request, is what I'm saying. I'll defer to Commissioner DeLauria, it's his district, but I don't have a problem.
If I may, does anybody else have, I have one question. Is anybody, we've talked about 10C, which is what this property, is there a home on 10D?
Yes, there is.
That's Angie speaking.
Angie
and-
Califer,
and
planning, for
The
the
previous one
record.
was Rebecca, answered Commissioner Zimbauer's question. So the question is this: could that be used, not by this one, but by previous? He stopped paying the taxes. He has a home. He made sure he was paying the taxes on the home. He says, I'm not going to be able to build anymore. Why do I want this property? So I'm not going to pay the taxes on that anymore. Are we setting ourselves up for unintended consequences? Is the question.
Mr. Chairman, that's my concern, because there's a lot of other parcels out there that don't conform. So where do you draw the line?
Are we, and that's the question I'm just asking, are we setting ourselves up? Because I think that I am fully in favor of what I think we're all going towards, is that we don't want this to happen again. We have to find a mechanism, and if other counties have it, it should be easy to find out what they do, and that, if it can be plugged into what we can do here. But my concern is that, there might be others out there that all of a sudden come in, the other person has already got a house on there, doesn't want to pay the taxes on the other lot, goes ahead and just lets it go, sells it. Poor person that buys it comes in, and now they're in a situation. So And Mr. Watts, I know that you handle this all the time, so with the indulgence of the commission, I'll allow you to answer that if you wish.
Thank you. For the record, Mark Watts again on behalf of the applicant. You know, I think again, I appreciate the concern with regard to setting precedent. And I think that was one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of include that last slide to assure you from a case law standpoint, variances don't set precedent. But I think the distinguishing characteristic that you can look to here is that the property passed through the county's hands. And you had the opportunity, the county, and again, this is not casting aspersion in any way, but there's a check and balance there. There's an opportunity for a check and balance there. And so I think recognizing that this particular property got through without getting that flag associated with the parcel number is the thing, you know, Mr. Chairman, to your concern. That other property owner that may have two tax parcels that decides that they want to let one go because it's not the one their house is on, if that comes through as a non-conforming parcel and you have the checks and balances in place from a policy standpoint, this doesn't happen again.
Right.
And I think that's the key with regard to making this decision is it has to be done in tandem, or it ought to be done in tandem with that policy directive.
And Mark, thank you for the explanation, but it's not just the precedent that I'm concerned about, it's the unintended consequences.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the applicant, if I may.
Please. Commissioner Delory.
We have, a title search has been done on this property. Obviously, it wasn't caught. Can you go back to the title company to get reimbursed for your loss?
Typically with a title search, you're looking at the status of title, the ownership, whether there's an encumbrance on title. You're not, you know, most title searches don't involve going and looking. They'll look and see if there's a municipal lien. They'll look and see if there's any other type of easement or, you know, encumbrance on title. But the development restrictions on a property are not something that come up in a title search. If I go to, you know, the majority of, you know, any title companies, unless I'm ordering a due diligence search or something by, you know, a land use attorney, a title search is not going to come up and tell me whether or not a property is non-conforming unless there's something in the record that, you know, that's been recorded with the clerk's office that indicates that. And that's where I think, you know, maybe the policy directive is make sure you're doing that when you've got something that comes through in a tax deed sale. The Volusia County approach is if the county ends up with a parcel that's non-conforming, they will sell it to an adjacent parcel with the contingency in the contract that a lot combination has to be processed and approved and recorded of record prior to the closing taking place so that the parcels are tied together.
Was this piece of property purchased through a real estate agent?
It was actually purchased from a real estate agent.
Okay.
The gentleman that was the seller is a broker.
So didn't the real estate agent have the fiduciary responsibility to disclose?
We believe that they do. Again, I think what ultimately we get to is a judgment that's not enforceable. And that's the biggest issue we have from a relief standpoint is it doesn't, you know, we can spend a lot of time and effort going down that road here and get to a judgment that you can't collect on. And so at the end of that road, Mr. and Mrs. Wasson are still the ones that are left kind of, you know, out, if you will.
All right, Commissioner Herr, and then Commissioner Zimbauer. Did I see your hand up also, Commissioner
I
Lockhart?
pulled it back.
Okay. Commissioner
I
Herr.
thought better of it. It's okay.
I'd like to hear from our county attorney with regard to the setting or not setting a precedent with regard to this.
Mr. Watts is correct.
This is Mr.
Deputy
Chipok.
County Attorney Paul Chipok.
Paul, it's very hard to hear you.
It really is.
Okay.
Paul.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
I am now unmuffled.
We'll be the judge of that.
Deputy County Attorney Paul Chipok. Mr. Watts is correct that from a legal standpoint, a variance should not carry any weight as precedent for other variances. However, as a practical matter, when a variance is granted, it tends to sometimes change the character and the development of the area. So it does have that effect. Although it might not be a legal effect, it does have a practical effect at times. In this particular situation, and Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong on this, this is a very unusual circumstance because the property, the new lot that was created, 10C, the property owner did go and get a easement to reach a public right-of-way, okay? But the property itself is not on a public right-of-way. Other properties that are out in the rural area that are substandard and not legally conforming, that are on public rights-of-way, can come in, ask for, and go through the subdivision process to create a subdivision of that existing lot that's less than 5 acres on the existing right-of-way. And that way become legitimate through the subdivision process as a lot that's non-conforming, okay? In this situation, since it is on a easement, that is not available under the way our comprehensive plan is written at this time. So this is a very unique circumstance. Did I state that correctly, Rebecca?
For the record, Rebecca Hammock, Development Services Director. Yes, in this case, we do allow subdivision on parcels that have access from an easement in the rural area. So in this case, they did have an established easement, so if they were granted the variance, they could come in and then go through the rural subdivision process to have access. We have officialized lots previously through the process, like Paul explained, where they weren't legally subdivided in the past, but they did have road frontage, and so we were able to officialize them as long as they met zoning and future land use. Here, they don't meet zoning or future land use. However, I think maybe the unique circumstance or the hardship may be the fact that parcels 10C and 10D probably should have been combined and shouldn't have been able to be sold separately because they were two separate parcels, but they should have been combined to make one legal parcel. However, they were separate parcels, and because of the failure to pay the taxes, the 10D was sold in the tax sale, therefore making 10D also non-conforming. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It does, but it also confuses the issue a little bit. Because
Sorry.
why did we allow that to be subdivided illegally?
Well, and that's something that probably property owners did in the past through the property appraisers, and that was prior to where we had that fail-safe in place where the property appraisers are required people who were subdividing, doing a lot split or a lot combination to come to zoning to make sure that it met zoning and future land use. So unfortunately, back in the 80s, the property owners probably didn't know that was required, or that maybe they weren't aware, and the property appraisers wasn't requiring it at the time.
Any other questions of Ms. Hammock? Okay. Other questions? Go ahead. Maybe not of Ms. Hammock.
I don't have any other questions, but I just want to address the character of the area. I would agree, if you were going to change the character of this area, it's one thing. You're not changing the character of this area significantly based on what's already there and what's already built. It's going to be consistent with what's there, except for the one owner who is here who supports it. I think it's very telling that, all the neighbors have written letters of support. They don't have an issue with it. I think as far as precedent setting, that's what the variance process is for. It's a set of circumstances that we must consider that are unique to a request. In my district, I had one last year where two brothers owned the parcels together. They were two parcels. They wanted to split one into a 2.1 acre parcel, and the other brother was going to take the 8 acre parcel. And I advised him, well, if you do that, you've got one parcel that you can't use. It's not buildable. So it goes on, it happens, but as far as I know, according to the property appraiser's office, we now have a process in place that would identify that moving forward.
Mr. Chairman?
Before we do that, does anybody have any further questions of the staff, or is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak on this? And I see none. Clint, I see none in the in virtual. Is that correct, Clint?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing, and I think that Commissioner Lockhart had something, and then you, Commissioner Delore.
So I'd just like to ask staff, assuming...
Oh, so we do have something.
Well, yeah,
That's
but
okay.
I said
That's all
yes,
right. Yeah,
but
that's all
anyway.
right.
So if for some reason this is not, this variance overturn, whatever, appeal, if we don't do what it is the applicant is asking to do today, what could you envision that property being used for at this point in time? Can't put a house on it.
So for the record, Rebecca Hammock, Development Services Director. The property could be used for agricultural uses. The agricultural uses are permitted. Of course, it wouldn't be eligible for anything that requires a building permit, but anything that's a non-residential farm building is not required to go through building permitting, so they could possibly use it for agricultural purposes.
So if they wanted to start breeding pigs, they could do that on that property?
Yes.
If they wanted to put a chicken coop out there and have a bunch of chickens and start producing eggs, they could do that?
Yes.
Anything else? I mean, obviously within the agricultural realm, but I'm just thinking, anything other than agricultural, like that sort of thing?
Yeah, only agricultural uses that would not require a building permit.
And I'm not suggesting that they want to start breeding pigs or start an egg production thing, but I think maybe the neighbors out there recognize what the alternative is to having a nice new set of neighbors, and that's maybe a lot more of what they had out there, which was not pleasant. And I know that the existing neighbor shared that things that were happening out there before were not good, and it's being cleaned up now, and he spared us the gory details, but my understanding is it was not pretty. And I'm just not sure what else we would gain as a community and as a county by not allowing this to go forward.
May I help out?
Commissioner?
Rebecca, can you show the aerial again of the lots? Please. That ain't it. There's another one actually, it could be. So I was hoping you'd show me one that actually shows you the size of the lots, because you had one that showed us that. Someone did.
I think the attorney's presentation had that.
And that's it. Can you put that on the screen? That's it. So you're saying that the one with the star doesn't have access to a road, correct?
Correct, but it has an easement.
Easement, correct?
Yes.
And the reason why we can't do anything with it is because it doesn't have direct access to a road and only an easement.
No, currently, it's a non-buildable lot because it doesn't meet its zoning classification.
I understand, but you'd go into a rural subdivision plan if it touched the road.
Right, so if it were to become a legal lot through the variance approval, then it would be required to go through our rural subdivision process to create, a one-lot legal subdivision, basically.
But someone mentioned something, talking to us about it doesn't have access to a road, direct access to a road, it only has an easement, so it couldn't go to a subdivision plan, correct?
I think the reference there is for a lot split. If you're going to do a legal lot split, which our code does allow you to do, it's called one free lot split, but in order to do that, you have to have, and you had to have been a legal parcel as of 1971, and you might be entitled to be able to split your lot as long as it meets zoning and future land use, but you do have to have public road frontage to do that.
Okay, so all those lots that are depicted there, can you tell us verbally what the size of those lots are?
Yes.
They're right up there, aren't they?
I can't read it from here, I'm sorry. My eyes are not that
Actually,
great.
I can,
Actually, if we could move the banner of
Still
the
can't read it.
Zoom.
5B is 3.59, 5D is 3.11.
Oh, okay, I didn't see the acreage there. So you're saying everything around that is anywhere from 2.3 to 3.59, is that correct?
This one is the 2.3, I think. No, that was the other one, okay.
Yeah, the parcel to the west, the 10D is 2.33. So everything to the north, those were legal parcels of record. And there's 5B is 3.59, 5D is 3.11, 5 is 3.15, and then 5C is a larger parcel, it's 8.37. And then to the south, the subject property, 10C, is 3.67, and then the property to the west is 2.33.
it's
So
not-
this lot is larger than the
And
others.
that's what I'm,
Existing.
what, Commissioner Howard, that's what I'm getting at. What I'm saying is that this is not the smallest one. It's not the largest one, because the largest one is 5C, I think, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, but it's on the upper size of the surrounding lots, correct?
Yes, it's not out of character with the lot sizes in the area.
Yeah, and I think the issue here is, does it adversely affect the surrounding areas that the surrounding lot sizes are larger, and this would be the smaller of all of them? Is that correct? That's the way I'm looking at it. Okay, I think I'm good.
The smallest of all
It's
of
not
them?
the
It's
smallest.
not the
of all.
smallest, I said not.
Not the smallest.
Not.
Okay, I misheard you.
Not.
All right, now, if we've done all the questioning, I'm going to add, this is District 1, Commissioner Delory, and so I'm going to recognize him.
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, I'm looking at the adverse effect that this would have on the surrounding areas. I don't see that it has an adverse effect, because as the exercise we just went through, it is not the smallest. And it's on the upper side of the largest lots in that area without actually doing a scale. I don't think that we'd be setting a precedent. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to overturn the Board of Adjustment's decision and approve the request of the minimum lot size variance of 5.5 acres to 3.47 acres in the A5 as presented here today.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
The only discussion I have, I think this is the right thing to do overall. I mean, I think that these are things that we're going to ultimately, as time goes on, we're going to come across these. We've come across them in the past. But here's the benefit to the county as well as the community. As Commissioner Lockhart said, you're going to have a viable residence on the property rather than somebody that's using it for a dump site. But in addition to that, you're putting it on the tax roll, which helps the area, helps the county, helps these folks who, bought a property, who have been Seminole residents for many, many years, unfortunately find themselves in that position. So I think, arguably, it's the right thing to do.
Mr. Chairman, the reason why I made the motion for what I did was because looking at that lot, it is larger than most of them in the surrounding areas and will not have an adverse effect of the surrounding lots. In fact, it's one of the largest ones out there, if I can see that, looking at a comparison of that chart. The question I have for staff, before you call the question, how do we prevent this from happening in the future?
Well, I think that's a second question that we'll do after we dismiss of this motion. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Now, let's go to that question. That would be like a future agenda item, but I think that there's a consensus here. I'm seeing shaking heads that we would like the staff, Madam County Manager, to, at the minimum, look at the policy that Volusia and others have where, we won't sell that property if it can't be used, or we would sell it to the adjacent owners, but also what we have outstanding and whether or not we need to establish a policy to ensure that this doesn't happen again.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it's true, but I think that if staff is going to be talking to people, they need to basically be clear about what's developable, what's non-developable.
Well, that I felt was part of what I just
I
said.
think that's a given, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what we
That's a
we try
secondary
to.
step.
That's,
I mean, we don't know whether this fell through the cracks or we've got something that takes care of it now. And I just want to make sure that we don't have this type of situation occur again. including, and including a person letting the sale or letting his taxes or her taxes go on a separate property that they have, then thereby making both of them non-conforming. Commissioner Hur.
I think the sale for past due taxes is separate from the issue of our record keeping internally and whether or not the notes are added to the records so that there can be no question as to whether or not bad information is given out. And I've consistently heard through this process that that doesn't happen, didn't happen, doesn't happen. And so that piece needs to be addressed as well. That was not past tense, it was current tense. And so I think we have internal processes that need to be addressed in addition to working with property appraiser and the tax collector, which is a bigger issue.
I think the whole issue needs to be addressed and looked at, and we'll look forward to you setting it up and bringing it back to us, what we can do.
I just want to clarify something. So
Okay.
clearly, internal processes need to be
Yes.
clarified, and I think Rebecca wants to address that, but I think they recognize that they need to be on top of that and making sure that when we have those kind of notations and we do that kind of research, it makes it into the file. Secondly, the issue of policy with respect to non-conforming lots going to tax deed sale. I think easy to bring a policy forward. That would be a board policy that we would establish. We can certainly bring that to you. I heard discussion earlier about trying to identify all legal non-conforming lots in the county. I'd like to have a chat with the county attorney's office about that and do a little deeper dive, because I don't know what sort of obligation we're taking on there, and whether or not if we take that on, we miss something, we might be buying lots. So I would ask you on that issue and that approach if we could do a little more discussion. I think the tax deed sale issue is kind of a no-brainer. But on that other concept, if that's something that the board wants us to pursue, I think that we should have a little more internal discussion on that and report back to you on what we find and what the issues might be.
Okay, I think that's why I was trying to make it a general thing, so you look at it and come back to us with what you think needs to be corrected and not, including what you just said.
I think the issue
But
of the tax deed sale eliminates any precedent on this, because you've taken the unique hardship here, and it won't happen again. That's something that I think is relatively easy.
Commissioner Zimbauer, would you like Ms. Hammack to speak first?
Well, she may be able to address this. I know Steve Fussell, if he's here, maybe he's not in the audience today, but I sat on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee 5 years ago as the Planning and Zoning Chair, and we had a discussion specifically about we need to identify all non-conforming lots throughout the entire county for another purpose, which was this discussion of people wanting to put tiny homes. Were there abundant or any significant amount of non-conforming lots that could be possibly a discussion for tiny homes because they would not be allowable to be used, et cetera, et cetera. That was something that staff was looking into then, and I only bring that up and say maybe some of that groundwork's already been done. So maybe check with Steve Fussell. I don't know if Rebecca, if they've dug into that or whatever became of it, but I know that certainly was direction and request at that time.
For the record, Rebecca Hammack, Development Services Director. I'm not sure if the effort that I'm aware of is directly related to that, but I think it may be. I know there were some code changes that occurred regarding antiquated plats that had lot sizes that did not meet zoning, and those specifically identified for affordable housing, allowing homes to be built on them, especially in CDBG areas, even though they didn't meet the minimum lot sizes, and they would be allowed to be permitted without the need for a lot size variance, but they would have to meet zoning for setbacks.
Right. And
so that may have partially addressed that.
Right.
issue.
Chuleota was one of those areas because Chuleota does have a water source, a actual freshwater source through what is now whoever owns it now. But anyway, and that was one of the areas for affordable housing, you couldn't have well and septic. You had to have sewer and potable water supply. So I don't know how deep dive they did, but again, some of that work may have already been
And I
done.
think identifying non-conforming lots for that purpose is one thing, but
Sure.
identifying non-conforming lots to protect buyers is
Understood.
another, is maybe not something we want to get into, but we can talk about that some more.
Right.
All right. Any further? Yes.
I do
Ms.
think
Lockhart.
that a lot of that was already done. I think the county already stepped into that realm many years ago and already did that in terms of platted lots. I think the only thing left to identify are those that are not platted, it sounds like, maybe. But I understand your concern, but I hope that that won't delay you bringing back the information.
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, and to be clear on that note, another issue on this particular parcel for me was the fact that it passed through county's hands.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now,
No,
we can
that's
sit
separate.
here and say we've
Yeah.
got sovereign immunity all day long,
Yeah, no.
but the reality is you have a poor couple who has paid good money for something that we would have had the opportunity to fix or correct or earmark at some time.
When you say poor, you mean not financial, just poor?
No. I'm just saying. I mean, their time is worth.
I just want to be clear. For the public record, I just wanted to be clear.
All right, so I think everybody's, knows where we're going on this.
Yes.
Good.
And then if I may, can I just clarify one issue? What we're going to do in the future, if it's acceptable to the county manager and county attorney's office, is that on our lot research requests, we can record those in land records. We don't currently do that. So if someone does do a title search, then they should find it in land records, if that's something that we can do.
Anything that helps
Yeah.
I think we
Clear up.
need to
prevents this
help
issue.
residents.
So we don't have poor folks come in again and ask for
Right.
this, right? Congratulations. Thank you very much,
Congratulations
everybody.
and welcome to the neighborhood.
Yep.
Let us know what kind of chickens you get.
And file a complaint with the Realtors Board.
Okay, let's go now to the county managers. Everybody okay? We want to continue?
Yes.
5-minute break or continue?
I could take a 5.
Let's take a 5-minute break.
Okay, 5-minute break.
Mid-late
We'll be back
50s, can't
at
hold it all
15 after. 3:15, okay, everybody? 3:15. Back to order. The next item we have on the agenda is the county manager's report. And so, county manager?
I have 2 items for you today. The first item is, I sent all of you yesterday an assignment related to Florida Power, FP&L, and our load
Mr. Chairman, ma'am.
management agreement.
I saw that report, assignment. I'd like to make a motion to approve the county manager's request.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Does anybody need any further explanation? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes
Wonderful.
unanimously. Next.
All of your offices recently received a request from the Seminole County Bar Association to name a couple of courtrooms in the criminal courthouse. Of course, you can't discuss that via email with one another. We do not have a protocol in place for naming buildings. We have one for parks, but not buildings. And I've asked Melanie to start putting together a protocol for you to consider moving forward for naming facilities. My question to you today is, somebody needs to respond to the Bar Association, and so I pose to you in a public forum, is this request something you want to move forward with now, or is it something that my recommendation would be perhaps we develop some protocols first and then consider any such requests against those protocols?
I mean, I'm not opposed
I'm
to it.
not opposed to it, but I'd like to see some protocols first.
Agreed.
Commissioner Lockhart.
Well, let me just ask a question. Has anyone responded to Mr. Yadav?
I let them know that I was going to be discussing it with you today, and that I would get back with him after today's meeting.
Okay. I personally feel like we do, I mean, obviously, we need a policy. I happen to know one of the individuals that the bar is recommending they name the room after, and he's wonderful. I don't know who the other person is. At the school district, we sort of had a policy that we didn't want to name things after people who were still alive and still had room in their lives to make decisions that would reflect poorly on a building being named after them. And I know that there are always reasons not to stick with that, but not knowing who the other individual is at all, and I mean, it is the Board of County Commissioners building. It is a building of the public, and I was somewhat surprised, no offense to the Bar Association, that they felt that basically if we didn't respond, they were just going to do what they wanted to do with a lack of response from us. And that took me aback a little bit, I'll be honest. And then to find out they've already named a couple of rooms in the courthouse, apparently. So do we know how that happened and when that happened?
Unofficially, you think?
No, I think there's plaques on the doors.
I'm unaware of how any of that came
I'm
down.
not aware of that. I mean, I would like to see a protocol and have a discussion. I mean, I go in and out of a lot of courtrooms around this country, with the exception of a couple of federal buildings, federal court buildings who are named after someone. I don't necessarily know of a whole lot of courtrooms that are named after somebody specifically. It's usually courtroom 1A, 1B, 1C, 2B, 2D.
I'm just not sure we want to, first of all, this board needs to decide if we even want to get into the business of naming rooms inside buildings for people, number one. Is that even something we want to undertake? And what is the process for that? And do names need to be submitted from the public? Does the Bar Association really have the authority to just say, hey, we're going to, I mean, if they want to, I don't know. To me, there's a whole can of worms there that I think this board needs to have a discussion about before
So
start doing this.
we have a consensus that we would like the staff to look at this as far as a protocol and bring it back for discussion?
I'd like to hear what Commissioner Herr has to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sometimes it reflects back. Commissioner.
Oh, okay, then I'll
Wave,
be
big
more
wave.
aggressive, because it is, I have a hard time seeing this way, so I can appreciate that. I just wanted to be clear that we're having two different conversations right now, and I am purposefully abstaining from one of them for obvious reasons. I will not participate in the naming of rooms in the courthouse locally. But with regard to the larger conversation around whether we even want to be in the business of naming rooms in buildings, that's I think, a really worthy conversation.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm happy to, I don't know if there's other municipalities that are doing it and have a policy procedure we could look at or come up with our own or vet a process. I mean, I'm okay with having that conversation. Whether we ultimately do this or do that is another discussion once we see the protocol and policies and so forth. You know, I'm with Commissioner Lockhart from the standpoint of, I don't necessarily believe it's a great idea to name, whether it's a courtroom, a bridge, a road, or anything else, after somebody that is still alive that could, at some juncture, fall out of good graces with their name. But, you know, maybe the county attorney's office can weigh on that as well. I mean, you know, then you get into changing the name and all that kind of stuff. So I'm happy to have discussion, look at protocol, look at how you do it, why you would do it, who would be qualified to do it, where you get names from. I mean, I'm happy to have the conversation.
I'll let the county manager put something together and report back to us.
County manager, you need any further
So
clarification?
with respect to the request from the Bar Association, the board is not prepared to move forward on that.
Sit
right
down.
No.
Sit
At this
down.
point.
But you would like us to bring you a protocol to discuss.
I
Yes.
think that's the right thing to do.
Correct.
And I think at the same time, I don't know if my fellow commissioners, because we've had this same request on like bridges, roads, other structures around the county, and I know that's always been, well,
Chairman, I'm going to bring something up under my report that's almost along these same lines.
well, if you want to discuss it right now, we're having a discussion, we can do it all at the same time.
There's a Orlando Sentinel newspaper article that was in the paper a day or so ago, and Sergeant First Class Cash, who died in 2005, 35 years old. He died in Iraq was decorated with a Medal of Honor. I'd like to do something in Chiliota for him.
Okay?
A
think
plaque
that's fitting.
or, you know, you don't
Roadside
know.
sign, something.
Well, I think we, again, probably ought to come up with a vetting protocol process.
And
I think the Medal of Honor is significant enough to
pretty
do something.
significant. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but that's a larger conversation.
Well, I understand
think.
that, but that's why I'd like to have some additional conversation like that.
We have Purple Heart roads, but they're not named James Smith Purple Heart Road.
I know that.
Commissioner Lockhart,
So, for the purpose of this specific request, is there a time sensitivity that created the urgency to do this with or without our response?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so who's going to actually interact with Mr. Yadav at this point?
My office will interact with him.
You or someone in your office?
I have communicated with him, and Melanie has also communicated with them. So
Okay.
I will likely hand this off to Melanie.
You what?
We'll likely ask Melanie to step in and handle the discussions.
Okay.
Just copy all of us on
Mr.
it.
Chairman, I think it's appropriate that we should have, as we're hearing here today, the proper protocols to do something like that. There's history, there's local history.
Sure.
There's significant local history that we should be memorializing, and there's no reason why we shouldn't have the proper protocol to do that.
Don't disagree, but you ought to have a set of guidelines to follow.
I'm saying protocols.
and that's what I'm saying, I can name one instance that this commission just recently named a road for a person that was alive. So yes, I think it's important that we do have some sort of process.
Well, and the unintended consequence of that was that the individual who the road had been named for
got very upset.
Well,
Their
his
family.
descendants were
Yes.
very upset that they were not even brought into the discussion and notified, why did you rename that road? It was named after my father.
And I just brought that up
Awful,
because I
yeah.
think that would be helpful to have,
Agreed.
something.
Yeah, this is not a flip of the switch kind of decision to make.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, County Manager?
No, sir, that's all I have.
And I don't believe the county attorney has anything further.
No report at this time.
Okay, so as we discussed at the meeting that we had before, I'm going to look for any public comments. I have no paper. Is there any public comments? Anyone from the public that wishes to speak right now? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. Now we have
On the line virtually?
the next thing is anybody, other than what we've already discussed, which, was what we just had with the appeal, is there anything else that anyone would like to discuss to put on a future agenda item? Commissioner Lockhart?
The only thing that I would like us to contemplate, and it's something that I actually discussed with Rick Durr a month or so ago that was referenced in an agenda item, had to do with the level of service of our parks in relationship to how much developed space there is in an area. It was mentioned in one of the agenda items as a criteria for approval of a plan development that we reviewed. And so I asked about that and said, well, what's our goal? What's the number? And apparently, as a part of our parks plan, that may be, but I think he felt like he may have needed some direction to explore that further. And so if that's something that the former Leisure Services Director is looking at me like, trying to read behind the mask of what that look is saying. But it seemed like it was something that if we're going to have it as a part of our mechanisms for determining whether a PD is appropriate or not, or if there's enough park space in the area, we should probably know what our goal is. And at this point, I don't think we know what our level of service is that's good, bad, or
That might be
ugly.
something for a work session.
I just, maybe it is, maybe it exists, and I just don't know, but I thought I would just bring it up as a part of the discussion for something that may want to be looked at in the future.
It to some degree, should have been established in the comprehensive plan with respect to the parks and recreation element, but we can talk to Rebecca a little more about it. She's back there studying something. But
If Mr. Abel doesn't mind addressing it, if he can, that would be great.
County Manager, is that okay?
yes, oh, absolutely.
You're at a disadvantage, Nicole, in that he sits right behind you and you don't have eyes in the back of your head.
Thank God.
It's probably a good
Joe
thing for
Abel,
Joe
Deputy
that I
County
don't.
Manager. There is language in the comprehensive plan about level of service, and it's interesting that you bring it up because there was just an article in the National Recreation Park Association magazine written by a local guy, David Barth, who's done some master planning with us, both in South Florida and here. There's a push to change and look at the way you do planning from a level of service use for parks and recreation because it's unique to every community based on what the expectation and the desire of the community is. And Rick and I have had some conversation about following up on that, but that is a planning effort that would be something that we would want to work with Development Services on moving forward and looking at that as we look at the master plan for Parks and Recreation moving forward, especially now that we have new numbers from the census and the development review that we're doing right now. So that's something that Rick and I had conversation on and we'll be looking at moving forward.
Okay, well, if you wouldn't mind just highlighting it and making sure that we have a conversation about that when the time comes, I would appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Abel. I appreciate it. Okay, any other future agenda item possibilities? Seeing none, let's go into the district reports. Commissioner Zimbauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to, and I'm sure everybody is aware of, just recognize Jason Sutton, who was involved in an unfortunate accident, one of our employees in Public Works, who I understand is recovering much better now, and our prayers remain with him and his family. You know, it's unfortunate these things happen, and as big of an organization as we are, there's always something going on. Also, the unfortunate and timely death of Sergeant James LaRue at the Sheriff's Office, who COVID-19 unfortunately took his life, and our prayers should be with the family there. Next item I've got is we finished up Thomas Stable Road repair. Thank you, staff, for taking care of that in my district where there was some improper connection transitions in a roadway that were causing some headaches and heartaches, and that's been taken care of, so I appreciate that very much. Retreat Road drainage project update. Looks like we're well on our way. We've got one parcel still remaining that we're waiting that is in probate to work our way through, and FEMA has agreed to work with us on the grant monies to get our process through that, so that will stay in place and ultimately get completed. Tomorrow night, 6 p.m., there'll be a meeting with the Lake Harney group for the Lake Harney drainage issues around Wickham Road and that area of Lake Harney, that we'll be talking to those residents in order to see if they're willing to donate the right-of-way or easements across their properties for the purpose of the drainage improvements. This will be the first step, of course, of many that we've discussed. So that meeting will take place tomorrow night with staff and the consultant. Also, Sunland Park, I want to thank staff for getting out there and cleaning the parks up and getting the excessive weed growth removed from the lakes or the ponds, retention areas, so that the children were able to utilize and fish from the shore and enjoy those water bodies and so forth. So I thank staff very much for that. Also, I would like to ask the staff to, I know we brought this up last time, the Sanford JPA, and have an understanding where that stands and where we're headed with that. I talked to the mayor of Sanford this week. There seems to be some confusion about what's being requested and what's actually happening with our staff versus their staff. So my desire is let's try to get what's really happening and get all parties of an understanding. You know, my statement in the discussion now with the two past, well, the existing mayor and the previous mayor was, there's a lot of things in a JPA, if you, instead of cherry picking, if you're going to open it, we might as well open it up. There's things that should be discussed globally for the transportation cost, firefighter cost, you know, the roads, the drainage, all those types of things that need to be looked at. So I would ask that staff give us an update as soon as possible on where we're really at with that and where we need to be headed. It seems to be that what I heard last time was we were waiting for, I guess, their staff to get back to us on whatever had been discussed at a staff level. I don't think that's the understanding of the mayor of Sanford. So if we can have some communication go on there and just report back to us, would be very much appreciated.
If you want, Rebecca can probably give you a report today, because she and I just had a chat about this, and I think maybe you've skimmed
Whatever the
it.
leisure of the board, I mean, I know we're going to be coming back here tonight. Maybe it's something you need to
It's a future agenda item.
Okay,
dig
sure.
into.
We can report out. We can do
So
a
I'm
briefing
okay
next
if you get
meeting.
back with us
I
later.
think we can put that, if you can get you know, I know that Ms. Hammock had a discussion with me and to update me recently. Maybe get it in the interim, but if we still need it, maybe we can have a report at the next meeting.
Yeah, that was fine, totally fine, no pressure. I'll move on to appointments. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Janine Ellison to the Historical Commission for a 2-year term beginning January 2021. I would like to get approval to appoint Dr. Gerardo Vizcarrondo to the Animal Control Board for a 1-year term beginning January 2021. I know we're not having a lot of meetings, but he'll be the veterinarian that would be the one that blesses all those things that would happen. Also would like make a motion and approval to appoint Mr. Joe Humphreys to the Parks and Preservation Advisory Committee for a 3-year term beginning January of 2021. Make a motion and ask for approval to reappoint Bob Hughes to the Historical Commission for a 2-year term beginning January 2021. I'd like approval and make a motion to appoint James DePoy to the Contractors Examiners Board for a 1-year term starting January 2021. Motion and approval for reappointing Brian Wilson to the Animal Control Board for a 1-year term starting January of 2021. Motion and approval to reappoint Mr. Clay Archie to the Agriculture Advisory Committee for a 2-year term beginning January 2021. And approval and motion to reappoint Jim Hunter to the Agriculture Advisory Committee for a 2-year term.
Second.
The motion and second for all those. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Thank you very
Opposed?
much.
Could I ask clarification? Were all of those district appointments, or were any of those board appointments?
District.
All district, okay, great.
And let me, while we've done that,
Yeah,
and you did it first,
I'm almost done.
okay, I was just going to bring up on that point, if that's okay.
Yeah.
A lot of, you know, I mean, we don't need to have all of these appointed today.
Right.
Most of the appointments, you know, expire in January. A lot of boards aren't meeting. But I would suggest that all of us look at our appointments that are necessary, try to get them done by January. That's all I wanted to say.
No, understood. I appreciate it. It's important to me to try to give these people enough with the holidays and so forth, and if I needed to find somebody else, I had time to do it and so forth. So anyway, I appreciate the support for all those people. They've all been good folks. They've all done a lot for the community, and I value their input. Finally, that's pretty much all I've got. Just for the chairman, I know and I appreciate the appointments that you sent out and advised us that we would all be sitting on. Just a point of clarification, I know it was raised by Commissioner Carey 2 years ago. Actually, Commissioner Constantine, discussion ensued between you and Commissioner Carey. And last year, when I was the chairman, we got with staff, we nailed down and drilled down the board appointments and so forth, the difference between a chairman's appointment and a board appointment. So I want to make sure that we're still following that guideline, or if that's not the desire of the board, how we want to move forward. I'm okay either way, but some of the appointments that I've been placed on are going to require board approval to do that. And some of those meetings will be coming up. So just a point of.
I did separate the two.
Okay.
As per the, the information that I had. And as I said, indicated, if anybody wanted to be on something else, especially, with the board appointments, just, they could bring it up, just like we did before with Ms. Lockhart and I, Commissioner Lockhart and I, exchanging different committees at one time.
We made a trade.
Yeah, we did a trade.
I think we made a three-way trade last year.
And for any of the board appointments, that's fine. And, and that's why I wanted to send it out early for
Sure.
anything, if anybody had any concern and, just
Yeah.
for interest.
Just
Thank
wanted to
you.
make sure we were still following that policy procedure. Other than that, thank you all very much. I wish each and every one of you and your families a joyful and Merry Christmas and a safe holidays, as many of us won't see each other until after the first of the year, unless we have this special meeting. Also would like to wish all of our staff, a Merry Christmas and joyful New Year and safety to your family. And I also want to take just a quick moment and thank all the staff for all the support and all the help, and my fellow commissioners. Last year, as I found my way through the chairmanship during a pandemic, I can't tell you how appreciative I was for the support. I know it's difficult when things are moving at warp speed, and Commissioner Constantine now is going to be living that. So my feelings are with you. I know what you're dealing with. It's very challenging at times, so good luck with that. But I want to tell everybody thank you very much, and thank staff for all the help and support they did through that very much.
Well, we
So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Seriously, thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay,
Thank you very much.
That's all I have.
Commissioner Herb.
Huh. I was expecting to go number 5, so
Oh,
rock on.
you are number 5.
I'm good. No, I know I am number 5. You're going this way, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, well, I'm going to be much briefer than that for obvious reasons. So I will report out on CFX. I served my last meeting there, as Commissioner Constantine will be taking over on that committee as the elected there. And there is good news there, and that is that the toll revenue variance year over year is well above what the revised COVID projections were. And I bring that up just to say that the revisions, while the board became fairly conservative with the revisions, we are well above what we thought. So the rebound to people actually driving, which is, I think, an indicator of economy, is uplifting. Work with Brightline continues, and we look forward to connectivity to South Florida and the Orlando airport. And I know that's sort of a thing that's happening over there, but it's pretty impressive and worthy of reading up on. I owe a huge thank you to staff for helping me bobble along in my first month doing this, and particularly Sam Tucker, and I hope she's still watching, for simply jumping in front of me and handing me things as I walk down the hallway so that I look well-informed and ready to go. And I know that's what happens normally, but I'm not accustomed to that, and she's really been fantastic. Here's the good news to Sam. We are in the final stages of hiring the District 5 aide, and to the citizens that are out there that are reaching out to me, I appreciate that it's been extremely difficult to be efficient without an aide, and God bless you, Commissioner Lockhart, for attempting to do it, but I'm not that good. And we had over 200 applicants. Many of them were highly qualified. The first round of interviews is done. We're down to the final 3, and we'll be making an offer very shortly. I am looking forward to serving on the new boards as assigned, and I wish everybody a happy and safe holiday. And I am going to go a little bit off the charter here, and we had talked about a little bit something special for you. Now, I know you don't need a plaque, and I was tempted to get you bourbon, but I was a citizen out watching, and I probably shouldn't unwrap the gift and the price tag's still on it. But here, this is for your office. And this is from all of us.
Is it a hand grenade to pull the pin?
No. I'll let you read this. But this is for you to remember your time as chairman, because we certainly do appreciate your effort.
When something bad happens, you can let it define you, let it destroy you, or let it strengthen you. Amen. Thank you.
And that is what happened.
Thank you
right
very
before
much.
our very eyes.
Very,
So
very
thank you
heartfelt.
for your
Thank
effort.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Lockhart?
Yeah. So I had the opportunity this last week to attend the Florida Association of Counties Legislative Conference in Jacksonville, along with Commissioner Constantine. And it was the first time, I think, an organization has attempted, at least to this scale, a statewide conference, social distanced, part virtual, part in person. But they really did an incredible job, given all of the hurdles that they had to jump through. It was funny, though, to notice, and I don't know if you picked up on this, but most of the South Florida counties were participating virtually, and the good old boys from the small counties were all there in person, and
They got out of the county. They were happy.
Gave zero. But it was really a lot of fun. I appreciated Commissioner Constantine encouraged me to attend this particular conference. I had not attended it in the past. It was just always something in the beginning of the year that slipped my calendar. But I will say, for any of you that have the opportunity to plug into FAC and participate in any of their conferences or the new member orientation or any of the Certified County Commissioner programs, every time I go, I learn something that I didn't know I needed to know. And it's just really that constant evolving and learning is just so incredibly helpful. One of the things that I did pass on to Tricia Johnson through the county manager, and I think I saw it get handed off to Oscar Anderson earlier today, there's a discussion about a statewide broadband initiative, which I know many of you are already aware of. The small counties have kind of taken the bull by the horns, and they have determined that they are all going to get together and get behind this initiative to support it. And it occurred to me that while we are not technically a small county, we certainly have a great portion of our county that could benefit from a statewide broadband initiative.
Amen,
So
sister.
the county manager is going, yes. So I did pass that along. I did not bring it up as a part of our legislative discussion earlier today, but that's who has that information if you're interested in hearing more about it, if it's something that we might want to explore. You will be hearing from a group of citizens from the East Crystal Chain of Lakes. They have gone through their MSBU process. They have achieved the required number of votes from their surrounding properties that were required, and so their next step is to come before us as a board. And I know that staff has been diligently working to try to accommodate something that's never been done before, the fact that an entire chain of lakes is coming together really genuinely with the sole intent of making sure that these lakes water quality improves, that it doesn't degrade. This is an older part of the county that is utilized, the lakes are utilized for stormwater, for our stormwater, the City of Lake Mary's stormwater. And so they, while they recognize that as waterfront property owners, they get a benefit, they also realize there's a responsibility. And so I'm teeing it up for them. If your offices receive phone calls to take appointments from these folks, they're very excited. They had hats made embroidered with East Crystal Chain of Lakes on them. I mean, they're excited, they're pumped, they're really, I hope they wear their hats when they come in to meet with you.
The next is T-shirts.
Yeah. Well, you know what? They made yard signs, like campaign, right after the whole election cycle, they were like, you know what, we should have yard signs. And so I'll be darned if they didn't print up yard signs, and they're all over the place.
We got plenty left over.
Yeah, well, they don't want our names, they want. Representing you on the Superintendent Search Committee for Seminole County Public Schools, I'm pleased to tell you that the committee did a phenomenal job. They have selected 5 names to go forward to the Seminole County School Board for consideration. Of course, the board has the opportunity to pull up any other names that maybe weren't included. They also could say, scrap it, we don't like any of those 5, and they could start over. But the 5 candidates are all within the state of Florida. There is 1 internal candidate, 1 candidate from Lake County, who had, interestingly enough, had been an elected superintendent in another part of the state where there are many counties, especially our smaller counties, that have elected superintendents, and then 3 applicants from Orange County. So they have a very big pool down there in Orange County to draw from. So as the chairman of that committee, I'll be presenting the committee's work to the school board on December 15th. So great work there. 2 things that I want to bring up that this board has talked about before with staff, and I don't mean to do it ad nauseum, but it seems I'm trying to find the magic bullet. The situation this morning with the item that was on the agenda that really, was a memory marker. I'm finding more and more with items on the agenda that we don't get backup for them, so I kind of tend to wait until the last day before the board meeting, the end of the day, to see if there's stuff that's being distributed. And I don't know how to fix that, but I'm not always here, and I'm not always waiting by my email that on Monday afternoon to get anything that might be coming. So I'm just going to bring it up again as a point of conversation. Just is
I concur. I would like to see staff, by example. I just got some documents yesterday about the hearing this evening from Public Works in an email. But, I know we've discussed this multiple times, and I know sometimes things fall through the cracks, or, you need something at the last minute, but I think we should be looking at some kind of policy that if you don't have everything gathered up, it either gets off the agenda and gets rescheduled, or some kind of process for vetting it. And I mean, again, I don't want to say, for me, it's not about being perfect, it's about being more consistent, because it does happen quite a bit. We get documents at the last minute, or I'll show up the morning of the hearing and go, my aide will go, hey, here's some more stuff that just came in. Is it important? Is it not important? I don't know until I look at it, but it has to have our attention given to it for consideration of making a decision. So, I would like to see some kind of process put in place that says, if you don't have all the documents ready to go, then don't put it on the agenda. If you don't think you can get all the documents together, don't put it on the agenda. If there's significant documents that are going to show up at the last minute, then maybe it just needs to be pulled from the agenda and rescheduled. And I mean, I realize everybody's running around dealing with, COVID and, all the things going on, but I think we could find a way to accomplish that. I mean,
Commissioner Zibel.
not to raise, and this means really nothing, I don't mean anything by it, but this report here, by example, and I don't want to pick on anybody in general, but cut and paste is real easy. But you don't have the right chairperson and vice chair on the front of this document for 2020.
That was last year.
just last year's as a reminder of what your priorities were last year, just so I clarify on that document.
Okay,
That was-
gotcha.
yeah.
Anyway, and things that come through that we're going to have to make heavy decisions on, that we get the morning of or the night before.
Yeah,
Some of us are traveling, some of us have other work stuff, some of us we're on boards and committees, and I don't know what the answer is, but
Commissioner, we had, at the last meeting during the ethics, we had a discussion of that after we went through the process. And the staff is well aware of the concerns that we all have on that. You know, most of the stuff, and I'm, you know, we're not making excuses here. I get the point, and they understand that concern from that conversation. But many of the things that we get are from outside sources. And, you know, then they get the dilemma, you know, do you give it to them or you don't give it to them? We have the choice, if we feel that we received far too much information to make an, you know, honest decision, to just postpone it if we have to. And I understand what you're saying. You know, the other thing, there was no vote today. That was, and I agree with you. That was the first question I had. You know, why is it, you know, and they explained to me it was 2 years ago. So, but I mean, I think, and I don't want to point to you or anything, but I think we talked about this a lot. I believe that Commissioner Lockhart was bringing up a good point, but I think the staff is sensitive to that and is going to try to make their best effort to ensure that what they provide us is given to us in a timely fashion.
Well, yeah, so I want to expand on it just a little bit and look at it from less of a myopic perspective and look at it from the perspective of the public. Because when they see agenda items and there's nothing for them to click on to learn what it is, we have a relationship problem right now with our community. There is some distrust and there's some opportunities for better communication, which I think could probably help that. But anything that we can do to not feed the perception that we are putting things on an agenda without all of the information, I think if we were to take ourselves out of the positions that we're in this room and put ourselves as a member of the public who is interested in what's going on in local government, their perception of what's happening here is not probably terribly positive given all of the blank pages. Because it doesn't then always get uploaded. All of the stuff that gets handed out to us at the last minute, the public doesn't see that. They don't know. So from selfishly, for me, yes, it's troublesome to get things later. But I'm looking at it from a more global perspective and seeing that we are continuing to have and not help ourselves to improve our relationships with the public right now. And this is maybe one way that if we can get a handle on this, that might be a step in the right direction to not, I mean, we're teeing it up for people to say, well, look, and there isn't even any backup on the agenda. So, and when there's a good and valid reason, I'm all about it. But it's happening too frequently that we're creating our own problems. That's my concern. Along with that, my second in that
Chairman, can
vein.
you just stay there for a moment, if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Commissioner Lockhart?
Sure.
So
Commissioner Delory?
I would like for staff to give us a hard date of when the agenda will be uploaded and basically frozen. I think that may be the answer.
Maybe.
Is that the agenda or information? I think you were talking about information, Commissioner.
She was talking about the agenda.
Well, the agenda that is often uploaded with, or printed out saying backup coming. I think we had 4 or 5 in this agenda
We
that
don't need
said
to do it
backup
today, but I'd
coming.
like for staff to report back to us when an actual date would be that I actually get the
Well,
agendas.
I mean, if the
County
board
manager.
wants, we can say if it's not ready to go on agenda day, it'll wait till the next
That's the
meeting.
point
I will tell you, it is a little bit difficult because in the 90 days between the end of October and the middle of January, there's 2 meetings. So we tried, oftentimes we know we only have 1 shot. We have 2 shots during that 90-day period to do business before the board. We can just say if we can't get it done, it just doesn't get done until January 12th. I mean, we can, that's fine. That's
And I think you need to report back to us what that recommendation is. Because I think you're hearing it from the 5 of us.
I think what I'm hearing is you don't want anything added onto the agenda or even placeholders put on the agenda. So it just needs to be scheduled for the next meeting, and that's fine. If that's what the board wants, we can do that.
Well, Chairman.
Mr. Constantine?
Commissioner Hurd.
I think what we're asking for is that if November and December are problematic, then when you come back with a plan that you indicate that for 10 months of the year, it operates this way. For November and December, we request the exception to be able to whatever.
That's
I
fine.
think there's flexibility.
That's fine.
But my sense of it is that there was frustration prior to November and December. I'm really appreciative of the fact that you guys are bringing this up, because I'm looking at it and thinking, I just can't keep up. So it's not me, but I think if you come back with something that builds flexibility in so that you can get business done on behalf of the citizens, and so that we are ultimately always transparent, then everybody wins.
And I think there's going to be cases where there's time-sensitive issues, whether it be an applicant or whether it be, some COVID CARES money deal or whatever it might be.
There's always an
Yeah, I mean,
exception.
everybody understands, hey, this just came in and we got a deadline of next week, so y'all need to make a decision. I think we all understand that. I don't think that's really where the issue is that we're discussing, is my sense.
Just bring something back to us.
I'm happy to do that. The other clarification I would like is a lot of the information that you get between when the agenda is printed and when you come to the meeting is additional information that perhaps one of you has asked for. And we share, for instance, documents related to the Water Management District. There are things that one commissioner has asked for, and if we share with one, we want to share with all of you,
Sure.
so you all have the same information. So those are things that you will get. That's probably something you got late last night. There were some additional documents that were asked for yesterday, so.
I started that, sorry.
We want to get that information to you, but I don't want to get that information to you if somebody's asked for it at the last minute, and then we're going to get.
I get it.
And we don't want to put the staff in an impossible situation that they can't please us at all. I think that,
Correct.
if it's something that comes, whatever you come up with, County Manager, I think one thing you might want to say is, if you do give us something like that, I put at the front, this was requested by a commissioner, and I think you might have done that before. And I'm just saying, so look for that, okay? Look for that, and if that's the case, then they're doing their job. They're giving all of us the same information that somebody has asked for. Okay.
So my other issue, and it goes back to communication and having a process in place, has to do with public records requests. And I know the county manager has said several times when I've questioned her about what's the process, and the county attorney's involved, and we've got a bunch of different people that are involved in fulfilling public records requests. At some point in time, I want to know what our citizens know. And when a public records request pertaining to an item that is going to be coming before this board goes out, and the documentation is provided back to those citizens, it is a very unsettling feeling to meet with citizens and have them say, well, all of these things I learned through my public records request, but we didn't know. The county manager didn't know when I asked her today about some of the documents that were provided. Now, if it's public, and we should all get it at that point. And so I feel like we are at an extreme disadvantage as a board when that information is disseminated, which they have every right to have, that if we don't have it. So how can we fix that? And because I don't know who fulfilled the request, so I don't know why we weren't copied on it, and I know I don't want to be copied on every public records request, right? No, I mean, that's usually the question, well, do you want us to give you everything? No, I don't want everything. I want the stuff that's going to be pertaining and relevant to me and my job. So if you all could come back with something to help us with that, that would be phenomenal. Because this one really brought me up short.
Maybe it would be like the short media report we get every day, maybe just a daily report or weekly report or whatever that says, this was requested by this individual or these folks, and this is what they requested. Then if we want more based on that, we could say, hey, we want the documents referring to that. Just an idea.
And maybe I'm the only person who wants to have all the information, but
Madam Chair, County Manager, are we putting you in a difficult situation?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
there are a couple of different ways that we handle public records requests. Anything related to commission offices, the county attorney's office handles. Everything else, the county manager's office handles. Certainly, things that are related to agenda items should go to everybody, board, county attorney, county manager's office. I don't always get copied on the things, and the county attorney's office doesn't always get copied because some things are not important to them. Well, there's already a protocol in place. We can revise that and get it out to everybody so you all see it and know what it is. And
then if they have comments, we can...
and if it's
sit
not
down
adequate,
with
you
them.
can let us know and we can adjust.
Thank you very much. Anything else, Commissioner Lockhart?
That's it.
Commissioner Delory?
Thank you. I'll try to make this brief. I spoke about this briefly, just want to make sure that we're all aware of it, that there's a resident that died in the line of duty in 2005 that was deployed in Iraq. He's now receiving the Medal of Honor, First Sergeant, First Class case cash, and I just want to make sure we're recognizing him appropriately, and I want to make sure that when we have those protocols, we're actually having his name in that as well. A couple of weeks ago, I was driving on the 417 around University, and it was shut down. I actually sat there in the car for almost 30 minutes and thought there was an accident. There wasn't. I come to realize that Duke Energy was actually changing out their power lines in Orange County. Since then, I had a meeting with Duke, and they're going to be doing the same thing in Seminole County, from the Orange County transmission line over by University substation, all the way to the Howe Branch substation in Seminole County. It's the Winter Park East Transmission Project. It's going to take them over a year. They've already put in some poles. They're going to put in some temporary lines, and they're going to change out the transmission lines that go through a small portion of southeast Seminole County, up to 417, across to 417, over by Lake Perquette, over by Howe Branch, and into that substation by Dodd and Dyke around there. It's going to take them a little bit, almost a year. Sometime in January, they're going to be launching a website showing all the things that are going to be taking place. So if you do get phone calls or questions, there's going to be roads closed. They're going to be coordinating with our first responders as well as our dispatch, because at certain times, either the day or night, the road will be closed when they shut down to change out those transmission lines or put up the temporary ones. Once they change out the existing ones, they'll take down the temporary ones, and you don't see double poles there. Right now, there's double poles, but the double poles over a year will go away. So that's going to take place, and it's going to be a lot of work. I'm glad that Duke is doing it. Two reasons why they're doing it is for more reliability, and also because of the demand that's happening in that part of the county as well. So that's going to be taking place. I do have some board reappointments, so I'll make one motion. Dennis Langlois and Tom Mentor, 2-year term Agricultural Advisory Board. Michael Frankfurt, 1-year term Contract Examiner Board. Tessa Horner and Paul Zubromski, 2-year term at Historical Commission. John McGrath, a 1-year term at Animal Control. And Don Peterson, 3-year term for Code Enforcement. That's my motion for reappointments.
Motion seconded.
Second.
Motion seconded. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. And I'd also like to do a letter of recognition for Matt Brown. Matt was on the P&Z board for 16 years. He just resigned. He's no longer going to be on the board, and I want to thank him for all his hard work. So I'd like to have a motion. I'm making a motion for recognizing Mr. Brown and his hard work for P&Z and his dedication to Seminole County as a volunteer.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
And in closing, this is our, unless we have a special meeting, this will be our last meeting of the year. I wanted to thank everyone for all their hard work this year, as well as all the things that have been going on with COVID-19. I know it's been very difficult, not just for the citizens, but for the staff. And I want to wish you all and your family Happy Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. This is the time of year that we actually should be reflecting on what's important, especially with COVID-19, the pandemic. It really brings it home. So thank you for your hard work, and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. End of my report.
Thank you. Under my report, I would, wouldn't it be nice if Duke could put them underground?
If you got the money, they'll do it.
Trust me, it costs just as much every time they fall down during hurricanes to put them back up again, as opposed to I just wanted to echo what Commissioner Lockhart said about the conference in Duval County. It was they worked so hard to make sure, and let's just, hope and pray that there is no incidences there, but it was a great conference. And I will let you all know that that is going to be a top priority for the Florida Association of Counties, is the broadband. And it isn't just, although the small counties are taking the lead, it's for all the rural areas. I mean, Palm Beach has one of the largest rural areas in Florida. And I get calls from time to time in Commissioner Zimbauer's office, area, and Commissioner Delory's area saying, why is our broadband so bad, or why is our Wi-Fi so bad? So, I know that this is something that needs to be addressed, and that the Association of Counties, fortunately, because it is a statewide issue, is really taking the lead on that. On a sad note about that, though, on the last day, they hand out the calendars for this year. Although we gave beautiful pictures, we did not make the calendar this year. I can assure you that 2 years from now, when I'm chairman, we will be on the calendar, since the chairman makes the choices. But
That's not self-serving, is it?
It's protecting and loving my county, okay? But at the same time, I will tell you that, Palm Beach County is the chairman this year, and she certainly had the front cover.
Oh, wow.
So it's the chairman's choice. But the fact of the matter is that, they're so close. I mean, all the pictures that were presented will be put on and highlighted on their ongoing day-to-day part of the broadband, the Wi-Fi and everything, and their, so our pictures will be on there, but it was sad that we didn't get on there. We did talk about and this is not on my personal thing, but I did want to let you know that I think tomorrow, MPO and the two appointees, the next day is Lynx and CFX. And just, I mentioned this before, one of the I think the alternates, we kind of like blow that off and everything, but if you really can't be at a meeting, it would be great if you made sure that the alternate could, because I want to, we all want Seminole County to be represented on everything. And I would look, because there are committees coming up this month later that you might have been appointed to, that you want to get all the information and be available. I also have 3 appointees that I would like to make at this time. Rex Clounce Jr. for the Agricultural Advisory Board, Mary Ann King for the Animal Control Board, and Donna Bundy for the Historic Commission, all 3 of which are reappointments. And now it's a motion, if I could have a second.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Is there discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
On the chairman's report, I'm new to the submissions. We got them out in time. I hope that everybody likes it. If you've got any comments, or please go to the county manager. We'll do the best we can to get them all out in the proper way that you would like. I think we all saw that there was a request by one of our favorite hoteliers about a resolution for Mr. Maladecki, who is retiring, and I am going to, if it's all right with all of you, I'm going to ask that that be put on there, the closest to his retirement, the meeting closest to his retirement. Also, I would like to suggest to each and every one of you that, we've talked about 100s, we've made people that have turned 100 and giving them resolutions. We've talked about and have done, I think, an incredible job with the veterans, and there's always great organizations from time to time. If there's anything that you want, I think we should be more inclusive than less. We don't want to overburden anybody, but I think that it would be something, if you want a resolution, please make sure you get it through the office, and we'll try to accommodate everybody's request. Couple of things that I did want to ask the county manager that many of us ongoing are looking forward to hearing some results from. One of them is the notification policy. And you said that you...
I have a final draft. We'll send it out to you this week. So the staff is already utilizing some of those procedures. We've got a couple of other projects that we've already given some advance notice on, but we'll send those out to you. And if you have any comments, we're not going to adopt it as part of the administrative code, so we can make adjustments to it as folks see we might need to. So I would welcome any feedback you might have on it.
So the policy, what we're doing is we'll be sending it out to all of us. We'll be looking at it, making suggestions, recommendations, but we all know that that's been something that's gnawed at all of us in one form or another, so let that be something that the staff is getting onto. I did ask, and you said you would give an update on the E.E. Williamson.
I have not had a chance, you asked me that
Okay.
last night, I have not had a chance to follow up on that.
That's okay.
Today, I apologize.
And you also, we talked about the 1792 and some of the things that we had talked about there, and bringing back that. And of course, one of the things that I mentioned also, during the Sanford JPA, we've talked time and time again about the Oviedo JPA, and I would like us to start at least, getting in communications with them to see if we could start working on something. You're shaking your head.
Well, we've been working on,
we've been in
they've been working on
communication.
Winter Springs, Oviedo.
Yeah.
Winter Springs has
Since
declined.
Commissioner Lockhart and I arrived,
Right.
that was one of the directives.
sorry,
Well,
did you
since
say
before
Winter
the two of
Springs
you
declined?
arrived.
Winter Springs has declined,
Right,
and we
they
got
declined.
communication from Oviedo this week saying they'll get back to us.
What'd you say?
That that the staff was going to confer with the city manager and they would get back to us.
And that's the reason
latest we
why I
got this
brought it up when we were talking Slavia, if they want, we should have a road JPA.
This is,
I'm not saying they're not interested, but we
didn't say they
did.
weren't interested.
Rebecca's been checking in with them regularly, just so
And-
you know.
Commissioner Hurd, Commissioner Zimbauer, Commissioner Lockhart, it's been going on since before you all got on here,
Right.
that we've been trying to do something with it. So I just wanted to bring up that it's not out, in some cases, we lay the thing out here, and every one of these things we've talked about before, and it's not our staff that is always, the slowdown. And that's what
Not always.
Not always.
Not always. I'm just saying, or the fact that
Well,
they are working
specifically,
on
what
it and it's
percentage
just
time
not,
is it?
and they are working
need
on
a
it and they
report.
just haven't it just hasn't
Would you
come
like
to
that in
fruition
color-coded?
yet.
Color-coded.
Color-coded would be great.
Oh, God. And speaking, not of color-coded, but speaking of these ongoing things, last year I thought that all of us, Commissioner Hurd not being here, but all of us really appreciated. I can't say we always enjoyed, but it was always educational about and moving forward on the retreats that we had. We did a lot of things internal last year, which the staff is still working on. In the last election, I can assure you that Commissioner Delory and Commissioner Hurd and I heard a lot of things about and you mentioned it earlier, the outward relationship with the citizens, and most especially the land use comp plan and things like that. So I've talking with the county manager. We've got a number of priorities that we need to clarify and give them direction in. So I think that what we would like to do is start looking at a time in the near future that we can put together some sort of retreat. And the county, I would ask you to go through, obviously, the county manager's office with any suggestions, but to clarify some of the things that we really would like to see as far as real benchmarks that we can accomplish as we move forward by this board. So I think that's something that I would like you all to get with county manager and express your feelings and hopefully open up your schedule so that we can do it sometime in the early 2021, if we could.
For a point of clarification, I think we had a full list that was continued.
Those are work sessions.
Understood, but we all gave clear direction and ranked what was most important. And a lot of that's still ongoing. And so are you asking us to add more on top of that without having an understanding when we're going to have
No.
resolution of what's
County-
already been asked?
Go ahead.
If I could, I talked with the chairman about doing a planning session with the board sometime after the first of the year, just to understand what the priorities will be moving forward. We would certainly revisit the key strategic issues. that you established at the last retreat. We have the tracker, the action plan that we continue to update. There may be some things that you want to adjust on that or augment. I think there are some other issues that could fall under those key strategic issues, some other initiatives that could fall under them. The one that comes to mind, just based on what we've been seeing recently, is land use policy, and having maybe a broader discussion over the coming year with respect to that. Your meetings seem to be significantly involved in land use issues, and I think maybe having some clarification and maybe even a conversation with the community about that might be something you want to talk about. And I use that just as an example of the kind of thing that I, from a staff standpoint, would like to get some direction from the board on as we start planning. We're starting to do planning meetings with all of the directors and the senior management staff. I'd like to really like to hear from the board as to how you feel about what you established last fall, over a year ago now, and maybe identify some things that you would like to work on in the coming year.
Good.
And not just from a staff standpoint working on it, but I think there are some things that maybe the board might want to work on.
And I think, Commissioner, I'll recognize, but I think that, last time it was, I think, helpful not only to those that had been here before, but the new commissioners when we did that. And now we have another new commissioner, and I think that just the group dynamics that is developed there, I think is very important. Commissioner Herr?
So one of the things that I think is interesting is that I ran for a governing role, and I think these are governing roles. And so I just offer that if there's a strategic plan that's built and it's coming back to a governing board for input, that it's coming to us with recommendations and suggestions prior to coming to us for the whiteboard. I don't think this is the place where the whiteboard can happen.
Correct.
It's just not safe for the citizens, because you all have the wisdom. I'm not saying, I'm just telling you.
No, it's so true. You're
It's
right.
not. We change over, we have, right? We're politicians, let's call it what it is. And so we have the strategic plan. I think if you're bringing us, I'm all day happy to build camaraderie in a meeting. But we should be giving input, not giving direction.
Well, Canaan Associates has already done a good portion. I think we were pretty vocal and very direct on what we wanted done there. But our jobs and role basically is set policy and budget.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
that's our roles. I mean, we have to rely on the experts, which should be our staff, to give us direction, give us advice, find those individuals or consultants that are expert, and bring them in. But ultimately, it is at our direction.
But they're two different things from a strategic planning perspective, right? So give direction is different from me walking into a meeting and whiteboarding where we think we're going. I think that's a dangerous position to be in. I would think that your team would want to do that before you get to us. It's just a thought.
If I could say, I think they have in the past, but I think what they're doing is they wanted to look, and I believe that it's been a long time since we really had a deep dive look into land use, comp planning, and if there's one thing that we continually have battle after battle, and we heard on the campaign trail, is that. And so I think it's very important that now, I agree with you. We're not the experts. They should, as a collective, we're not the experts. We are the board of directors. And I think they can bring us ideas to help us move forward. And I think that is what we were talking. So I want us to be clear. We're not talking about we walk in and throw things up on the wall and hope they stick. And this is, I think that they're saying we've got some concerns, we've got some ideas. We'd like to know direction. Okay? Does that clarify a little bit what you were thinking too?
I'll use land use policy as an example, because that seems to be a topic that comes up at every meeting. There's a land use policy that was codified years ago by the board, and the land use decisions that you're making are not necessarily consistent with that policy because things have changed. Conditions in the county have changed. And from a staff standpoint, it's difficult for us to try to give you recommendations and tell you this complies with your policy, because your policy says one thing and your actions and your application of the policy have been different. And so I think reconciling those things is important. It's important for you, it's important for the citizens, it's important for staff, so that that the policy, the stated policy that people who live in this county and people who may want to develop in this county can rely on reflects where the board's thinking is. And so getting the 10,000 foot level on those kind of things so that we can then help you craft land development regulations and more of the operational things that staff does is important. But understanding what's your expectation for Orange Boulevard, or, I mean, things have changed. And so understanding, getting an understanding of where the board is on that, and I'm not sure that you can tell us at a meeting, but identifying that as this is something that we want clarified, and this is a priority from a governing standpoint. Staff go out and have a conversation, do some work on this, and bring something back to us with a recommendation. But identifying where you want us to focus our resources, and maybe you just say, we like what we did October of 2019, just keep doing that. Or is there some? My gut is, at least from a land use policy standpoint, that we need to start spending some time on that and some energy. But I want to make sure that we're doing that in a way that's reflective of a governing philosophy.
And for the record, we did actually stick things on the wall at our retreat.
Right.
And it did stick.
They stuck.
That's right.
Well, I think there's value. There's about the gentleman that we used to facilitate that was wonderful, and I understand he has left the area. He's like maybe across the country now.
I think he's in California.
California. So I would highly recommend that we have someone still to facilitate that. If it's not him, I think having an outside facilitator
He
was...
has agreed to do that.
Oh, has he?
I've already been in contact. I've informed the county manager's office, because we're coming up on, review times, which sort of goes in lockstep with the discussion we're having right now. That, like he did on the last visit, he often is consulting for other governments, and if we are able to schedule it at the same time he's in the area, then the cost to us is much less than a solo trip coming out specifically for Seminole County.
Well, gosh, that would be ideal.
So Deborah, I'm pretty sure, shared that with your aide, Mr. Chairman, but if you have any questions with that, lean on my office. We're happy to give you any and all data you need.
Commissioner Zimbauer and everything, and that is what I was trying to, bring up, is I think this, I would like to leave that in the hands of the staff to start setting up and work with each one of your offices so we can come up with time that accommodates all of our schedules and his.
So the desire of the board is to go ahead and try to get Larry Ross back in, which from a staff standpoint would be great, but.
That would be great, consistency.
I think consistency
and
would be
continuity,
fabulous.
yes.
Right. I mean, we've got the date. My office has the date when we all agreed to when the next retreat was supposed to happen. So if you want to start there and see if that's still good or not good, that's fine.
And that's the date that already
I'm good with
works
all
for
that.
him?
Okay, County Manager. Last thing is you all received by email, and then, of course, each one of your individuals, as well as on Friday, all of this. I have a hard copy here for everyone if they wish, but it hasn't changed since Friday. As Commissioner Zimbauer mentioned, the ones blue and below are board appointee. I wanted to make sure that everybody had the chance to look at it and give any comments. The ones below the blue line are board appointments, and If everyone has, I have no pride of authorship in here, other than I thought that I tried to be fair and consistent with everybody. Everybody has 6 committees, everybody has 5 alternates. If anybody has, would like to make a motion on the board appointments.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Is there any discussion?
The only discussion I have, staff may have to, I thought we had a discussion that the Historical Commission was not going to be a liaison from the BCC, because that was a county appointment. Is that, did I miss something there, or? I mean, I'm happy to serve on it, that's what we were going to do now.
And
but
Jay, Commissioner Zimbauer, I know that you've had interest before, just like I have.
No, I'm fine doing it.
And I served on it before we decided not to appoint somebody.
Right.
It is their hope that we have somebody.
Okay.
So I'm
fine.
accommodating
No, that's fine.
citizens that are spending a great deal of their time to support. And there is, the one thing that people get confusion, there's a society and then there's a commission.
Correct.
And they meet on the same day.
Right.
And sometimes they meet one right
One
after
after the
another.
other, right.
Yeah, so the society, we do not have a member of. The commission is the one that's chaired by Ms. Bundy, Donna Bundy, that would like to very much have
No,
somebody.
I'm fine. I just wanted to make sure if we were changing things up, nothing happened. I'm totally fine with it.
I'm trying to make the citizens happy.
No, I'm good with that.
Mr. Chairman?
Any further discussion? Yes.
Well, the only thing I would point out is that Committee Number 9, I was on last year, and to the best of my ability was never able to get any response to when they actually met, where they met. So I would just advise Commissioner Jolari and Zimbauer that hopefully there would be some flexibility, that if it's found that that's not actually in existence, that we can maybe remove that from the list.
They just had a seminar.
I'm going to say, before we ever did my appointments, we reached out to them to make sure
Yeah.
that they were still, quote, viable and
Right.
operational.
And since they are something to do with transportation and the MPO, they were a child of the MPO, basically. That's why I put Commissioner Delory and Commissioner Zimbauer.
All right, well, I'd be great to hear that they're actually, because it's been a quiet year.
Right?
It has been.
Well, they
Well,
won't.
no, it has overall for a lot of us, because
Absolutely.
just FYI, OEP just canceled their board meeting.
Yeah.
So-
And they've hardly had any meetings. And all of us will have boards like that, we may not even
Right.
have meetings, or have maybe 1 meeting or 2 meetings a year.
Right.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none. All right, that concludes this afternoon's, yes?
Mr. Chairman.
I was going to say, is there anything good for the order? Commissioner Hurd?
It's not good for the order.
Anything bad for the order?
I was 100% convinced that when Sam came bolting through that door that she was going to say, "You're welcome," for the thank you. But what she came to say was that I forgot to make my board appointments.
Oh,
There we go.
So here we go.
okay.
I make a motion for the Agriculture Advisory Committee to reappoint Imogene Yarborough for a 2-year term and Barbara Hughes for a 2-year term. Animal Control Board, reappoint Gail Hare for a 1-year term. Contractor Examiner Board, Bill Young for a 1-year term. Library Advisory Board, reappoint Rachel Garcia for another 2-year term. Parks and Recreation, reappoint Emily Hanna to another 3-year term, and Daniel Roy for a 3-year term. They've all agreed to serve.
Second.
Motion and second, discussion. Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes.
And I'd also like to make a recommendation for a resolution of appreciation for Jeannie Hayes for her
Second.
service on the Board of Adjustment.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, now, anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to wish Kendra Young happy birthday. Her birthday's tomorrow.
That's right.
Birthday.
So please, if you get an opportunity, please stop by and say happy birthday.
Well, and before we go, we know we're going to have a long meeting tonight. So all we've got is that on the agenda. I'll see you all at 6 o'clock, and I just wanted to concur with everyone else about have a wonderful, wonderful holidays and keep your family close. It's very, with what's all happened, we all know how important that is. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting, or we will recess the meeting and see you all at 6 o'clock.
6 PM. Thank you.